Hello.
Je suis. That's my name. Je suis. We'll say with this basket and North's victory.
Here we are. We're on, baby.
We're here, boys. We are ready to go on a Saturday afternoon. A bit of a different time slot, and I'm friggin' over the moon.
Why is that, Dylan?
Oh, no, it's connected already.
We planned that.
Kanga. We got to win.
Row.
Two wins. Two in our last three now.
What does that feel like?
It's a bit of a weird space.
Yeah, right.
But I was weirdly confident going into this game against the Blues. I said to my dad this afternoon that we should be beating these guys. They've got a few outs. They've had a poor season, and I feel like we're building into this back end of the year, and we could go on a little bit of a run here. I reckon we could win probably 50% of our games.
50%?
I mean, from here, obviously. That was from the bye period, so the West Coast. Essentially, when we played West Coast, sorry.
Wow.
Okay.
Who else are you going to beat? Not to downplay you. Great result.
No. I think we'll beat. I think North should be setting their sights on, and this would be more in line with what I think the club, where they thought they were going to be at with what they did in the draft last year. But I feel like every team in the bottom 10 we should be targeting as a potential win to be able to push them. I mean, I don't think we're going to be really competing with those like top 4 to top 8 sides necessarily, but I think we could take a scalp here or there, shape the 8. But these type of teams, your Sydneys, your Port Adelaides, your Carltons, that sort of group of teams, I think we should be trying to get past. What do you boys think?
I think the last 3 weeks have been great for North Melbourne. Even though the West Coast game was a terrible football game, you got the result, which is the main thing, and then really admirable, honourable loss against the Dockers where you showed up, probably the better team on the day, and then you rock up at the MCG, which is a ground you don't really play at too often, and you get the dub. Before we go any further, I did not realise this game was at Adelaide Oval. I thought it was at the SCG, hence the thumbnail graphic. Sydney are left and Port.
We're professionals.
Yes.
We are professionals.
Subscribe to True Footy. But yeah, great 3 weeks for North. Best 3 weeks in a long time.
I think it is. Like, I think you're starting to... I sort of saw it, and I mentioned it on I think it was the Freo stream. We talked about how they've sort of become a team now. Jesse will be familiar with this as a West Coast fan. You're kind of scrolling through statistics to see how your team's kind of going in the comp, and you're just in that bottom 2 or 3 teams, like West Coast, North and Richmond, pretty much for every major statistic. North have moved out of that this season.
Okay.
So we're starting to see in like core areas, contested possession, the clearance phase of the game. We certainly don't have a great transition game yet, but we're starting to actually really get on top of teams in certain parts of the game. And I think that's where you see us, we can compete with the better teams in the comp.
My viewing of the Carlton North game was a little disjointed. Obviously, we spent the second half mostly driving here, and in the first half I sort of had people over, and it was funny. It was 19-8 Carlton's way at quarter time, and then we just sort of got talking about the UK. This person was from the UK, and the next time I looked at the score, it was 19-46, and I went, what the hell just happened? It felt like North were able to pile on goals very quickly in this game.
And then I came in and was like, what the hell happened? Because I came in from the Div 12 Resi's game, 6 wins on the trot for the boys, and could not believe my eyes.
It got out to about 50, maybe it was just under, but about 50 points at some stage. I remember getting back, as I was telling you boys before, I've been at the vet this morning with a sick pet, and I came back in, and Dad...
Dylan has rabies.
Yeah. And Dad was watching the stream, and he's like, this is a train wreck. And North, at that point, it was, I think, like 19-10. Mm-hmm. And then we just didn't stop.
Yeah.
We pretty much went on a roll, kicked like probably 6 or 7 goals in a row, and that was pretty much the game. And we have done that at certain points this season as Port Adelaide, and Sydney are about to get underway here.
Port Adelaide by 4 goals, IMO.
Yeah, we better actually do the tips quickly.
This was a smashing this time last year when they played Sydney on the top of the ladder, and I think it was like 60-0, wasn't it, in that game? Something
it was
crazy.
Incredible. It was like a 90-point win when Sydney were in that horrendous patch. I'm going to go with...
I think it was like 72, actually.
Okay, but one thing we haven't talked about with this game, as it's just getting underway, Goulden back in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
This is Goulden's first game back in for the Swans. I think that's massive for them. Whether that actually puts the W on them, I'm not too sure. I'm probably with you, Drews. I'm probably Port Adelaide, just on form.
Well, they had a good win last week against your boys in Melbourne, Dill. So
Goulden is a big in, but a fully fit Goulden is what they need.
Yes.
And so that's obviously a question mark. As Sydney get the
McInerney
first goal...
kicks the first. There's a lot of feeling in this. Yeah, Port are one of those sides that just love a biff.
They do. They're an emotional team, aren't they?
Yep.
They get up for these sort of games that have this sort of vigor in them. It's a weird game in general because these two teams, we forget that they met in a prelim final last
Yeah,
season.
that was a boring
These
game.
were on the ladder positions, Drews, first and second at the end of the season.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
crazy.
it's funny to see how much they've fallen away.
And now, it's like whoever loses this game, you can put a line through. I don't think either of these teams will make finals, but if you lose today, season's over.
Oh, McInerney absolutely gave him one there. This is terrible by Asava.
Yeah.
What is he doing?
I feel like Sydney's season's already over, to be honest. But I would say that Port Adelaide can keep theirs alive in mathematically if they win this game. It's 11 versus 13. Mind you, it'll be, if Sydney win, both teams will be 6 and 8. But I would say both teams are out.
It's a 9-horse race, isn't it? If we're actually doing the ruling teams out. There are 9 teams that can make the finals, in my opinion.
I'd need to double check.
We'll get into
statistics
our
here, but
I
I don't think I disagree, to be honest.
I went a little bit too early. I mean, I've seen crazier things happen than one of those other teams coming in, but obviously you saw with Carlton today, they're not making the finals.
There's
no way.
How good. I got criticised so heavily for not having Carlton in my top 8.
So did I. They were the one at the beginning of the season. I had them 12th. I should have had them 14th.
Yeah. They're not the only sets of fans who do this, but they do arc up when you don't rate them and then slaughter their own club as much as any other fan base in the competition. I think that if Port win today, they are the 10th horse, although I wouldn't bet on it.
So what do we got? So Gold Coast are outside, but they're not really because they played 2 less games.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, this ladder here is not. This is my ladder prediction. We're going to do later.
Over at yours, but, okay. So currently it's the Dogs. That actually sit that spot out.
Yeah. I'm confident they'll make the finals, personally.
The Dogs?
Yeah.
So who's your miss, GWS?
Well, I suppose we'll get into that. We're going to do our ladder prediction. I don't want to spoil it. I know everyone's
getting excited,
eagerly awaiting it. But I think that I'd be pretty shocked. Looking at the fixture, I think the Dogs have a lot of winnable games left. So that comes into it big time.
With these 2 teams and the dramatic drop-off that we have seen, we mentioned they finished first and second and languishing at the moment in 11th and 13th, Porter 11th, Sydney at 13th. What are the biggest reasons for you guys that these 2 teams, maybe we'll start with Sydney, why are they so shit?
Well, I think the first answer is injuries. And I think that it's been the sort of trademark players, in particular Goulden, missing. And then the structural pieces as well, like Amati and Logan aren't A-grade key forward, Logan McDonald aren't A-grade key forwards of the competition. But when they miss football and your team sort of relies on that structure, I think those are just 2 players that they couldn't deal without. I think they combined for 80 goals last year, right? So there's that. Probably also some scarring from the grand final. We saw they didn't bounce back well from 22, scraped into finals that year. And a new coach who has a very difficult challenge in front of him. So I'd say it was all those things combined. I think you take away some key players to the way Sydney play, and because they're not a conventionally structured side, I think they've fallen away maybe a little bit worse than other teams.
Can we just have a pit stop at the Dean Cox conversation? How much do you boys, I'll go to you, Druzy, there, like how much do you put on, like you'd have to say that this is a bit of a disaster for him. Now, it doesn't mean that his whole coaching tenure is doomed or anything like that, of course, but he hasn't had the players there, but at the same time, it does feel like some of the blame has to go on him a little bit.
Yeah, well, it was Horse's decision to walk away from Sydney at the end of last year. Well, early this year, whenever it was, to hand over to Dean Cox. But other than one bad game in September, they were one of the better home and away sides that we've seen in recent times. So for them to get a new voice in charge, I feel like it was a drastic change for something that didn't need too much tinkering with. Obviously, that grand final sort of going to be in the back of their minds as well. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like injuries played a part, but Dean Cox has just seemed to, I don't know, be at the forefront of it a bit too much, I feel like. Like, first stream we did, McCartan was playing forward and I just didn't like that move. And there's been press conferences where he's just like a really dramatic coach. So I don't know really how to feel about Dean Cox. I'm sure you're spewing that you didn't get him at West Coast, Jesse.
Well, actually, that's a conversation point we can go to here.
Because you didn't want him at West Coast, did you?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't super convinced. I don't know. It's probably just a demeanor thing. Like when a fan of a club who changes coach is assessing the options, we look a little bit at resume and we kind of go off vibe. And I would say I erred on the side of probably not being super keen on Dean Cox.
Interesting.
Is
that just the way that he communicates, or
it's kind of his demeanor and Yeah, basically, I don't want to trash the guy's personality, but
No,
but I also acknowledge that I'm
good.
not qualified at all to assess
But that's
him
your
at that point.
It matters, right? Who you're, the way that your head coach presents themselves, like the
Yeah.
way that they communicate with the fans and stuff like that.
As far as resume goes, he would have been a very good candidate. Instead, we went for I think Dean Cox pulled out. To be fair, pun intended. And
True footy.
yeah, welcome.
You surprised yourself with that one.
Yeah. I was like, did I really just say that?
A Freudian slip.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on Dean Cox then? Dylan?
I'm a bit
Over
with
to you, Dylan.
I'm a bit with Druzy in the sense that in the preseason, it was so, I don't know, like he really wanted everybody to think that he was a big dog.
The man.
Didn't he?
Like 204 centimeters.
Yeah, I don't know. He really wanted to make an announcement that I'm a senior coach and I want to make these moves where the public and the media talk about me. I feel like, he's a genius. He's made this move of McCartan Ford. There's stuff like apparently he made the Swans players in the preseason when he was given the job sit in a room and watch over granularly pieces of the grand final loss for 7 hours.
So dramatic.
That's a bit cooked. He does come from the John Worsfold school of coaching, rather.
Smooth.
So, Woosha was a very old school coach even back then, I reckon. So that does not surprise me that that's his approach. And the system and the successful club that Cox played with, I reckon the culture was sort of aligned with that. So I'm not surprised at all to hear that.
And it goes in line with that also. I remember the 2K time trials where he made them repeat it. I feel like there's a bit in, when you're looking at the modern player and the psychology of the game, is there a bit there where you make your players do that after they've sat in the room and watched? I'm not saying that all happened on the same day, but then you make them do a double 2K time trial. There's a bit of a lack of trust.
There's a bit of Crows preseason about it. Obviously, that Crows preseason was a bit full end of the spectrum, but man, just go out, have a kick, do your training, get better at your game, get the players to understand the way you want to play. You don't have to torture them.
Yeah. Do you reckon,
to prove a point.
Do you reckon with Longmire, I was probably a bit like this because you're disappointed as a neutral fan, those 2 grand finals that they got smashed, you get a bit pissed off. And did we actually go a little bit hard on Longmire at the time where he probably, looking at their list and when they did lose Goulden and a couple of players, as Goulden actually just gets on the ball a little bit there, did we go too hard on him and he was actually maybe doing a pretty good job with the players that he had available?
He's an outstanding coach.
Yeah, I don't think anyone looked at the grand final and went, John Longmire, that's your fault. There was some selection questions about that grand final. Logan McDonald, I think he played with a broken foot or something like that, which he just shouldn't have. So, small decisions like that, but Goulden didn't show up. Heaney was playing through. Obviously, you're going to play Heaney on grand final day, but, I don't think it was a
It just felt like
get rid of the
we
coach
had
job.
we had this feeling that Sydney had a stacked list, and it doesn't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a bit, Drews. It sort of, as soon as, basically Cox started coaching the team and they had a couple of outs, it was like, whoa, they're threadbare in certain areas.
I still think that they're still stacked in some, Goulden amongst others have also missed games, but I go back to the fact that if they've got a brand that doesn't rely on a typical structure and they've got great medium to small players, if you take out some of the best of those, it doesn't allow them to play their brand.
100%. And I think Goulden was the one that you just could not afford to lose.
Yeah, he's like a trademark player.
He's a trademark player. Most modern teams that are successful at the moment have that, ball carrier that's got pace, got endurance, pretty much just does all of your ball movement for you. And Goulden's really that player for them. So it's the one that you can't lose.
Yeah.
We've spoken about the Goulden and McKercher comparison quite a lot with 2 North Melbourne teams in the past couple of weeks, but man, he's having some sort of year. Well, maybe a bit of a slow start to it, but that
McKercher.
game today,
his last 3 weeks has been really good.
You can safely bank that pick now. You got that one right, I think. Even though you missed Logan Morris, who had a monster game last night and is looking like one of the most exciting key forwards in the comp. That McKercher one.
He was picked 33, to be fair. I wouldn't
31,
put that on North.
yeah.
31, was it? Yeah, I wouldn't put that on North, to be fair.
Probably the 2 keys that we could have taken in that draft would have been Caddy or Curtin.
Yeah.
I think they were really the only ones in consideration.
Yeah.
Connor O'Sullivan was probably the next one picked at pick 10.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how.
I think it went Curtin, then O'Sullivan, then Caddy.
Did it?
Or Caddy and then O'Sullivan, because Geelong traded down 1 pick.
Right.
Adelaide traded in for Curtin.
I know that North, the one that was most likely to happen for North was Curtin.
Yeah, you're right. But though, 3 relatively evenly ranked keys from that draft. Does Sydney go inside 50? They had a bright start despite us slaughtering them. On that, just to finish that Dean Cox point, I will say I will lean on the side or err on the side of empathy for Dean Cox. I think it would be a tough gig to go to a club that has all the expectation in the world with none of the players available, coming off a terrible grand final loss and have to implement a brand. I'm sure you can criticize certain moves, but I think every new coach makes questionable moves, and even McQualter's done that, but he still has my backing.
For sure. It's all like I feel like all of these criticisms about coaches and stuff, like it's only footy at the end of the day, right? But like you're making it in the context of the season. Sure. It's like if you finish in the bottom four, you've compared to your peers, you've maybe underperformed, right? I think that's kind of all we're saying. So we're not having a massive crack at them.
No.
Port Adelaide have actually got a couple of outs for this game as well. Just looking at the list, like Alia is missing.
Yeah.
Big one for the back line. Ollie Wines out of that midfield probably gives them a bit of depth, and they've omitted Hugh Jackson. In comes Lockie Jones, Christian Moraes, Joe Berry. So
we love Christian Moraes.
We do love Christian Moraes running down that wing. Berry has been a lot quieter than I expected him to be. I was so keen for him. Not that you want to have too much expectations on those players straight out of the draft, but yeah, he was one that I had as potentially one that could win the Rising Star.
I said the same thing actually in my. I went back and watched my preseason predictions. I said I didn't predict. I think I said Levi, but then I said, but look out for Joe Berry.
I mean, Levi was the safe pick.
Joe Berry, sorry.
We should be friends because I also predicted Joe Berry for the Rising Star. Yeah. I've said it on the stream before.
We should hang out less.
Here goes Christian Moraes through the middle of the ground. That is just him, isn't it? I know he's butchered the kick there, but him like running through the middle of the ground, usually good ball user.
Yep.
Yeah, when I went to the under-18s championship game last year, Big Country versus Big Metro, Joe Berry was unreal that day.
Yes. Yeah, one of the best players on the ground.
Yeah.
I thought because of the fact that he could run through the midfield, that would get him enough ball to get him into the game. You don't really want... Like, I'd never sort of pick like an Isaac Kako, sort of deeper small forward to win a Rising Star. It's just like too much pressure. But I thought Berry might have been able to get up to stoppage a little bit. He's just been a bit quieter. But
Eli Luth in the comments said, Joe Berry got omitted for Finlayson. That's a name I haven't heard of in a while, Finlayson.
Really? He's been playing?
I just feel like he could be so much more, Finlayson.
Yeah.
Got all the tools. Here's Chad Warner, streaming inside 50.
That's a goal.
I reckon it'll skid right.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it is too.
Yeah.
Genius.
Great start by Sydney in terms of intent. Not so much the scoreboard just yet, but they're looking on.
Port Adelaide are butchering the footy.
I think the record between these two sides, and I might not get it absolutely bang on, but I reckon Port have won like 10 of the last 12. I think when they
Seriously?
beat... I think, yeah, Port... Well, Sydney also had that little rebuild that we kind of quickly forget about, and Port was competitive. And then you had the 112.1. You had the one where Alia touched the ball on the line and Ollie Florent thought it was a goal. That Port beat them earlier this year in Sydney.
Yeah, they've already beaten them once this year.
Yeah, so the prelim actually bucked the trend of that.
Yeah, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, there was a long run.
42 people in the chat. So
let's be honest here, though. This isn't exactly the game. Anytime these two teams play, you're not absolutely up and about for it, are you?
Not even the prelim.
Really?
Would you say
I like
that
them.
These two teams?
Well, you get excited for this.
Am I saying that? Am I going too much off this year because of the fact that they're
it is 11th versus 13th? But
I agree with you, Dylan.
I think they're historically recent history, like AFL history, pretty two strong competitive clubs, and I don't share that.
You're spot on. You know, I don't know if there's just some teams where I don't know, and maybe this is because I follow a Victorian team, and it's like, you obviously you get up for those Collingwood Carlton type clashes, and it's just two sort of random interstate teams.
Yeah, for sure. 38 people watching at home. Thank you guys for tuning into Footy from the Flat. Make sure to hit a like on the stream and get involved in the comments. Any talking points you want discussed throughout the night, let us know.
What about Port Adelaide's big losses this season? What have you put that down to? Why did they lose by so much? We go to the game against Collingwood, 91 points. Bulldogs, 90 points. Geelong, 76 points. And they lost to the Dockers by 49 as well. So that's 3 games by over 50, well over 50, and 1 by 49.
Yeah.
Well, looking at their season in general, I had a look, and they have also another team that's actually dealt with a lot of injuries. But defensively, they're not quite where they were last year. And I think their average score is 76, which is 9 less than the average this year. So those things are not getting right. But more directly on the big losses, which was your question, that's something they did last year, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was just one. Maybe it was just the qualifying final against Geelong. But do you remember that? the way they finished the home and away season, they beat Fremantle at Optus. I want to say, they had a good win somewhere else at like Marvel. I think their last month they look like probably the best team in the competition. At maybe not scintillating, but very defensively sound last year. Only to then go to a qualifying final and lose by like 84 points or something to the Cats.
Yeah.
So it's not out of their, I don't want to say their character, but it's not completely out of character, I guess, for the Power to do that. It's just we've seen a little bit more often this year.
Yeah. I would throw perhaps a little bit of that towards, this is going to sound strange because it's probably the area of strength for them, but their midfield's very offensive.
Yeah.
Which can open up scoring quite heavily. So if they're running particularly that mix of like trying to really attack and hurt you with Horne-Francis, Rosie, Butters, they open themselves up to being scored against. And then I feel like you talk about their being pretty solid defensively. I'm not sure if their defenders are that solid.
Yeah.
While they can stop scores through the midfield and get the ball locked in their front half and kind of trap it in. I don't know if like one-on-one they can get exposed with Aliir, not the best one-on-one defender. He's good at coming across. Like Asava, wouldn't say he's the greatest. So they probably lack a little bit of key position talent, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I would go back as well on the midfield defense aspect of it because you can have a makeshift defense that does well. We've seen Premiership teams have sort of a thrown together backline in some examples, or grand final teams at least. But for Port, I agree on the really offensively minded thing. I noticed they've gone from being a relatively strong scores from stoppage team this year, and the only two teams that are worse than them are West Coast and Richmond for that stat this year.
Yeah, it's incredible actually, because Druzy, when we did that video together in the preseason, and I think I had as my potential Brownlow medalist this year, Jason Horne-Francis, and it was off the back of that. He was able to create so much damage from stoppage, and it's just gone away.
It's weird that.
Yeah.
Well, Butters did miss, so if we're talking about the stat, and it's a differential stat that I just quoted. Butters missing, and Rosie's spent a bit of time at halfback too. Those are also factors.
But last year they had such an ability, not just like, for example, last year Freo were a big clearance differential
I was just
side,
say that.
but they didn't necessarily strike that well. Whereas Port Adelaide were like a big scoring team from that source.
Well, they've been missing Marshall and who else? Obviously, Lukosius has barely played, I think, hasn't he?
Is Cooper Lord out as well? Or?
He's played.
Ollie Lord.
He's played. There's one that I was going to bring up. The rucks, I think, probably are a discussion point there too. Haven't been able to settle on one. Like, haven't they got Vicentini playing as the sole ruck at the moment? Whereas, like, it was probably last year between Soldo and Sweet.
Yeah, what happened to Soldo? I swear he started really well at Port.
I have no idea.
I don't know where that sits.
I have no idea. I think he requested a trade.
Yeah, that's right. It's the Saints, and it didn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, strange career trajectory for Soldo, but I think it's all been said. But the back six of Port Adelaide's obviously their weak spot. Zerk Thatcher was, not. I don't really follow his career at Essendon, but wasn't really doing too much there, and they were obviously needing defenders at the time. He leaves. Josh Sin, high draft pick, hasn't lived up to the hype. I think he's had a fair bit of injury. Kane Farrell, great ball user. Haven't seen enough of him defensively.
We didn't speak about Houston either.
True, that's
a
a problem.
Point. Yeah,
that's a joke.
That's a big out because he was for Port Adelaide. Like, he was that primary distributor. Good defensive player as well. So he wasn't someone that got 30 every week for Port, but used the ball, was really offensive from halfback when they needed him to be, and could come into the midfield a little bit as well. I don't feel like Burton or Farrell are in that same company of high-end player.
I think offensively Farrell can be off of halfback, but he doesn't have the versatility to necessarily go into the middle.
I'd probably put Farrell in that conversation where he's a really good technical kick at the footy, but maybe his decision making is not as high as some other halfbacks.
Interesting. I haven't really had a look at his decision making, but
the kicking looks sexy as.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So I'll just shout out the chat a little bit here. We've got a bit going on. A couple of people, Eli and Harry, said that Finlayson was a late in for Berry, so we missed that.
Oh, shit.
And Pat Kaz says 9 of 10. I'm not sure if that's the Port Adelaide Sydney ratio of wins.
Marty has missed from 20 out. He kicked 9 on this ground last year, didn't he? Against the Crows.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
Crows?
You might be right.
Yeah,
he definitely had a bag. He kicked a 9. He definitely did.
Far
I
out.
can't remember who that was against.
I'm pretty sure it was against the Crows.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's funny to
It
think
wasn't
what
against
happened.
Port because they got pumped.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How do you guys rate that Port Adelaide key position line if everybody's fit? So it'd be probably Georgiades, Marshall, and Lukosius.
Yeah,
as the three
probably.
tools they'd probably run with.
Yeah, it's unconventional, not really having that power like Charlie Dixon type.
Yeah.
I'm one that finds myself barracking for Lukosius to come good. I really like
Me too,
his
me too.
upside, but he seems to be a bit maligned.
Where is his
Half
best
back or-
position?
I was about to say
Yeah.
half back or
We've
forward.
that
Yeah.
question has never been answered. Maybe you should just go play volleyball or something.
Could he be a high half forward?
High half
Does he
forward.
have the endurance?
I was going to say, does he have? He probably doesn't
Yeah,
have the endurance.
probably
And does he
not,
have the ground? Quite the ground level capability.
Yeah.
And he's not defensively sound enough to play half back and have that accountability.
Yeah, it's all offense.
So he's probably just like a deep forward, to be honest.
Yeah,
Well, the reason I wanted him pushing up obviously was to deliver the ball inside 50 as much as actually kicking at the goal face.
100%. And he's one of those guys that can absolutely drive the ball. So as far as like getting you territory, and then players like Horn Francis Butters can win the ball back, even if he just kicks it to a contest.
Georgiades is also coming off a 7-goal performance. He's a good
Yeah.
player, and he's undersized, but Jake Waterman is 190 centimetres.
How I thought Georgie Hardy was Georgie Hardy's. I thought he was about 195.
I think he's smaller than that.
Yeah.
Maybe, I'd go 192 maybe.
I reckon he's like medium tall
Yeah.
have a
type.
Yeah, like a good steak.
I like
Yes.
this because it's so funny what you have in your mind just
Yeah.
from looking at them.
Jesse told me the other day that numbers have colours, Dylan. Do you agree or disagree?
As in player numbers.
No,
No,
when you
not player
picture,
numbers.
picture like the number 3, is there a colour you associate with it? 'Cause it is-
I don't, but I think this is a thing
yeah,
for some people.
It is a thing. Druzy
Yeah.
reckons we all made it up.
You guys
We
are
did.
correct.
And we're all in on it together.
Do numbers have colours? Get it in the chat.
Georgiades is 192 centimetres.
Blue.
There
Oh,
you
I
go.
called it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said.
He was the draft year before I started my time at the State Academy back in the day that I always allude back to.
Where's he from?
Swan District's drafted from.
There you go.
I reckon.
Interesting.
But the coach that I was working under there said that Mitch Georgiades was the best athlete he'd ever seen.
He's a great athlete.
He did his ACL in his underage year, I think. Didn't really play too much footy heading into the draft. And then like draft combine came around and was just like vertical leap, like ridiculous
Yeah, right.
athleticism. So
I think he's a gun player. I think he's turned into a serious forward.
Wasn't his dad like a high jumper or a pole vaulter? There's something with an athletic background, I remember.
Yeah, right.
Oh, we got a few people saying 3 is red. I agree with 3 is red.
Sean says 3 is yellow.
Interesting.
Can that mean
And
that
it's
could obviously
all
mean different things
yellow.
to different people?
Yeah, so not everyone's colours will be the
Yeah,
same,
yeah.
but it's like an associative thing that I presume we form as children.
What colour's 26?
No, so it's only
Oh,
single
nah.
digits.
It's Luke Parker.
It's single digits. Oh, yeah, you're right. You got it. You got me. I was making that entire thing up, and that was
Yeah.
where you
You're
proved
Do you
me
guys
wrong.
do you guys have that though, where like and you hear a number and you just put it to a football player?
Yeah.
It's like sort of embedded in your head from childhood, or
Yeah, my dad did that the other day. We were watching Hawthorn, and I can't remember the number.
No,
Might have
that's
been
good.
Blake Hardwick, and he goes, "Oh, Paul Pios," and he's like, "Oh shit, no, it's not."
Who the fuck is that guy?
that's so good.
Yeah,
When I think 3, I just go Sarong, our man, your favourite player, Dylan, who had a great Thursday night performance.
yeah. Nice. That was good.
Don't start this
That was
again,
good.
Dylan. Don't
Same
start this
number.
again.
Look similar.
Yeah,
Play similar.
yeah. Similar consistency.
Yes.
Good. Similar
Parrish is
accolades.
averaging what 32 touches in 2
Oh,
games
get
since
out
he's
of
been
it.
back.
Yeah, right.
10 clearances.
Oh, that's pretty good numbers.
Yeah, his numbers are good. His numbers are always good. All Australian.
Yeah,
is.
so
Yeah.
I've heard. Yeah.
Incredible stuff. Grundy should have his way in the ruck here today, shouldn't he? This is
We have a goal drought. We're nearly quarter time, and we've
Yep.
seen 1-5 to 0 goals 2.
this is
Story
good
of my
though.
love life.
This is good.
I don't mind the contest so far. It's not pretty, but it's two teams like playing with a decent intensity.
We've
Can't
talked a
score.
lot, Millsy.
Missed.
Oh, jeez. We've talked a lot about Port. And we haven't really spoken about Sydney. I feel like a lot of the things that we said about Sydney, or about Port Adelaide, also apply to Sydney a little bit. Like
Yeah.
it's like what's going on with the tools. I sort of hate their mix in sort of several areas.
Oh, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. I mean, like the Sydney forward line, like Amati, he's looking okay, but if you were to rank these two teams against each other, I would still say Georgiades is the best key position
100%.
Yeah, on current
player
form, certainly.
across both teams.
Those players are so frustrating. Those like Amadi types. We need a name for these types of players that are just almost players. Like I was thinking the other day, and I don't want to hate on my own player, but like Neil Erasmus and Ben Hobbs are the same player for me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like you're just waiting for them to
In the
go
sense-
to that next level.
Archie
Yeah.
Perkins is another one. A few Essendon players.
But like Amadi is that for me. Like he's shown his capability to be a great mark. He's obviously a great athlete, but they can't put it together consistently, and I just don't know why.
Let's find out how old he is, though, because I think what you'll find is a lot of key forwards are like that.
We got a comment from
he's
MOB,
25. That's older than I thought.
which I want to address.
I think a lot of that, particularly with key forwards, comes down to mentality. It's so mentally driven.
Jai Amos is one of those.
Yeah, 100%. Because it takes such a strength mentally to be able to like fly into contests consistently. There's so much, like we forget how much fear there is. Like when the ball goes in the air, you just have to butter up and go again, compete,
And then try to take the mark.
try to take the mark, try to dominate. Yeah.
Butter up joke.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
MOB says, I need Dylan to apologise to Sarong.
What am I apologising for exactly?
Comparing him to Darcy Parish. saying he's a shit kick.
No, I mean he's not a great kick. That's not. Well, he's not like it's just a.
Did
fact.
you watch the game the other night, Dylan?
Yeah, I did. He
Did you watch
kicked
him?
that?
No,
He kicked two.
I wouldn't say he's a great kick either.
He's not an Isaiah Wanganeen Miller kick, but he would be an above average kick. And on the left foot as well.
Like
Kicked a great goal.
The goal was incredible, and I love the fact that he can do that. Like he can push forward, and he looks pretty clutch currently in the form that he's in. Looks pretty clutch when he gets around the sticks, like that other one when he was running in on goal as well. But yeah, I'm talking when he wins clearances more so when he's in that phone box type situation. He can give the ball away a little bit, like a lot of players can. I think he's still got like a little bit of a way to go to get to that sort of Lachie Neale cleanliness. So just how Lachie Neale can exit a stoppage and always like use his hands a little bit more. But he's like Caleb Sarong at that position at what he does is one of the best players in the competition.
Yeah.
He's
I've
also
never argued that.
he's also better than Neil at the same age.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Neil really hit his straps when he left Fremantle. He was a good player there, but you know he won a Brownlow, and I think his first or second season at Brisbane.
He was best and fairest at Freo the year he left. I think he got that 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I'm not downplaying that he was good at Fremantle, but I just mean
He hit
I was
his
actually
prime
giving credit
years
to
at Brisbane.
Yeah, I'm giving credit to Sarong for being so good at that age.
I think our conversation too was around like comparing. It was a my opinion thing that a player like Will Day, although hasn't had the consistency of Sarong, is a higher ceiling player, and I don't think that's particularly controversial.
I will agree to disagree on that, but I will concede that Sarong can butcher the ball in the phone booth area. That is a good point that you make, and that is growth. And we're not going to talk about Caleb Strong anymore.
I was going to
And
say
you're
this
not
has come
gonna-
up every week, every time.
So you're not getting an apology, MOB?
Nah, sorry.
No.
You're doing a 2-hour compilation at the end of the season of Will Day versus Caleb Sarong.
Simo wanted to shout out Jeremy McGovern. We haven't spoken about that. Jesse, one of the best sort of game-changing intercept defenders. Like he seemed like a player that when he hit his prime, and you can speak on it more, but he really changed the game. So yeah, terrible to see Jeremy McGovern's career end early due to injury. What do you make of it?
I remember when he was drafted, he was this fat kid from Albany, and everyone was like, "This is the most rogue rookie selection ever." It might have even been like rookie 3, that selection 44, I want to say. Completely plucked that number, but I think everyone was like, "Oh, this is weird." And then he, plied his trade in the waffle for Claremont before the alignment. Then he showed up to a preseason again, like massively out of shape, and I think it was Woosha back then basically banished him from the club and told him to get fit. And then I reckon within a few seasons, I think he debuted 2014, and by 2015 he was very close to evolving into the player that he would eventually become because we played in the grand final. Eric McKenzie and Mitch Brown do their ACLs. He finds a way into the team. Drafted as a ruck forward, then he plays as a defender.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was he really?
Yeah. I can't remember if he debuted forward. I think he might have against Gold Coast 2014, but then sort of settled down back. He was always a little bit short to play ruck. 195, and I think drafted at 190. Funnily enough,
He's one of those players that, like you spoke about it there, like doesn't have the physical attributes necessarily, like athleticism. Like he was just a genuinely good footballer, like a very highly talented footballer. Why do you think the way that he played revolutionized intercept defending and that type of thing.
Well, actually, it's testing my memory as to whether it did. I don't dispute it, but I think that back in the day, defending was a lot more back shoulder one-on-one, and then I think McGovern was a part of at least the first wave of players who sort of played in a zone. And the West Coast in 2015 had that thing where they had no tall defenders or no recognised tall defenders, so everyone played slightly off their man as a web. They called it the Weagle's web, and it just sort of suited McGovern's game style to just be able to fly from the side and take these amazing intercept marks. And he did it well. I mean, he's the reigning All-Australian centre-half back.
Yeah,
he's been
All-Australian
extremely
last
consistent.
year.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He's
I think
one of
the
the
West
goats.
Coast did particularly well with that because I remember you had similar zone type defenses previous to that, like the Clarko cluster or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Before that, but you guys really turned it into like a major offensive weapon. I feel like with McGovern, like he was so loose.
Was it prior to 666 where he was almost like the spare man in
Yeah.
defence all the time?
Yeah, it would have been.
When did 666 come in?
I reckon either 19 or 20 because
Yeah,
I think some people suggest that was a part of the reason West Coast fell off initially.
Yeah. JD in the chat says the goal after the siren against Port Adelaide in 2018 was awesome. Obviously took that intercept mark on grand final day that
Yeah.
slungshot you to a flag. So, yeah, champion of the game, even though he's a West Coast player.
I'm actually going to slightly disagree too with the fact that he's not athletic. I reckon he's a player that looks unathletic,
Yeah.
but
I agree.
actually is athletic.
I was going to let that slide, but I agree that he doesn't look like an athlete.
Yeah.
But I think if you watch how quick he actually is for a big man, and he's actually a pretty good
Aerialist.
a field kick too. For
He is.
a 195, he's actually like a leading meters game player, I think, for a while there. So,
Yep.
I was
Versatile.
gonna let it slide, but yeah, he just doesn't look athletic.
No,
it's
I know
more-
what Druzy was coming from. though.
Yeah, he's not like your typical key position draftees now. Right?
Yeah.
Definitely not that kind of athlete, but certainly not lumbering.
I just like that comparison, speaking about that sort of preseason where he showed up. I think he was in Bali or something.
Phuket? I
Yeah,
wanna say.
yeah, Thailand.
Yeah.
And just showed up out of shape. And Nikola Jokic in the NBA is a player that just does not look like an athlete, but he's one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world. It's just interesting that you have these players, and yeah, maybe I'm not giving McGovern enough credit for his athleticism, but just on talent alone, they can.
Yeah.
Decide
It's
to
similar
play
with
the
like
game.
Mahomes, right?
I
In the
haven't watched as much NFL, but
Yeah, it's like sort of a. I know it's a different game, obviously less running and stuff like that, but yeah, just not really like bit of a dad bod
yeah.
going on, but just like serious power. I feel like
Another story to come out of West Coast this week, Jesse, is Oscar Allen being wrapped up in bubble wrap, says Spades. What are your thoughts on that?
An elaborate prank by his teammates.
Not again.
I can only speculate as to whether his injury has ruled him out for the year. I'm inclined to, I don't think they have ruled it out. They said medium term. I think everyone's concluding he's probably not coming back.
Was the
Yes.
first thing that they said, right?
No idea what that is. It sounds like something you'd find in a greenhouse or something. It's the Latin name for a plant. But look,
That's good.
I think any team in our position, regardless of whether we got a player who might leave or not, would have their captain probably not just come back for the last 2 weeks and play. So if it's a case of it being line ball for him to be, playing in the last few weeks, it probably just makes sense regardless of the potential move to not play him, if that makes sense.
Do you feel like he's been over this journey? I feel a bit sorry for him. Just how everything's gone down. The secret meeting, Butters is just on fire here. Won the centre clearance, got on the end of this inside 50.
There is oil in it.
But yeah, I just feel like he's been
miss
so
that.
unfairly treated. Like the fans are a bit against him now. It feels like he had to come out and do that press conference and everything, and he's sort of he has been pushed out of the club, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's somewhat. I think West Coast have set their price of what they're willing to pay, which I think is fair enough. And I think you've sort of expressed that, or maybe not. But
I'm not criticising West
No,
Coast.
I get
I'm not
it.
criticising.
I
I'm
get
just
it.
saying I feel sorry for him.
yeah, I agree. So I don't know if I would go as far as to say West Coast mistreating him. It's hard. There's just a big gap between what Brisbane is willing to offer and what Allen is. What Allen is getting from West Coast.
Bang. Butters kicks the first of the goal. First of the game for Port Adelaide.
Nice.
First of the goal.
The whole thing was undoubtedly a shit show. The apology that he did was unnecessary. I would have just
Yeah.
let it slide. But the fact of the matter is, we've got a media like the West Australian in Perth is just nutty. Like they'll go to any lengths to, blow up a story out of nowhere. West Coast also is we're very proud and loyal fans, and we expect loyalty. We don't lose a lot of players. It was a huge deal when Judd left it would have been big for any club to lose Judd, but it's just a big deal when we lose a player. Willie Rioli wasn't treated well by fans when he left. So all of that is a factor. I do feel genuine sympathy for the guy. I want him to come good. I wouldn't begrudge him leaving if it's the best for his career. I don't think West Coast has done much wrong by not offering or matching a deal that Brisbane is offering, because I think that's something we've been criticised for doing in the past.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I would love him to leave, if at all, on good terms with us.
First two sorry to cut off here. First two centre clearances of this half, it's Butters into Heaney here. They look like they're just keen to
head to head.
Pull this game apart.
Just haven't scored like goals. They've kicked 1 goal 6, and Port Adelaide's still winning the score.
Blakey runs into 50. Can he finish? He does.
Nailed it.
Here we go. The game's opening up now. So can you just say that Alan leaves confidently? Has he played his last game for West Coast?
It's entirely possible. Yeah, I'd probably say it's a 70% chance. I think the only change, what could change, is Brisbane's interest cooling.
Yeah, and with Logan Morris.
Yeah, if the
Do you
gap
think
between
they would have already set all of this up though? Would they have already agreed in at least a handshake terms?
Possibly, but I suppose, like, what would it take for a club to go back on that?
Yeah,
terrible year of form and injury? Because we're probably at that point. So I think if Brisbane remains as interested as they are and West Coast are unwilling to throw some more money at Allen, then it's just going to stay the same situation as it is right now.
Yep.
Is my prediction.
I don't blame West Coast. I mean, where you are on the ladder at the moment, you don't always get that opportunity to get that sort of compensation as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of West Coast's strategy here, if you want to call it a strategy, but it's certainly part of their thinking. It'll be interesting to see if, Brisbane's offer is only enough to generate band 2, because then we're looking at pick 20, and I think that probably does change the equation. I think West Coast would then match. Force to trade, or, Allen would stay in that instance.
Who would Allen push out of the Brisbane side?
He would push out Sam Day, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sam Day's, he's a year older than me, I reckon. He was inaugural.
I think they would.
Suns player.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but they would just run with Hipwood, Allen, Morris as the 3.
Which I think can work as a 3.
Yeah.
Butters, another 3 possessions in the last minute. He's gone ballistic. Vicentini. I can't say his name ever.
Yeah, why? No,
I don't know.
It's just phonetic. Like,
how do you say it?
Vicentini.
Hornet.
Can you spell it out for me? Goal.
V-I-S-E-N.
No, like syllable by syllable.
Vis. N. Teeny.
Like Vicentini.
It ends with Martini. Like this stream.
Vicentini. Yes. Lads. Hello. We had fun here.
This is the first stream I'm not getting tipsy on.
Because, when we came up against Essendon the other night, I was like, there's another Vincenzo. Because there's an NBA player called Dante DiVincenzo. So,
maybe that's what it is.
It's one of those, like, neuronic wiring issues.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Over to you, Dylan.
Yeah.
Horn Francis kicks Port Adelaide's second goal. And it's those big name players really starting to come into the game, I feel. Butters has won a couple of clearances, got involved off the halfback transition there. Vicentini competed really well.
I have a point to make that I was going to make before and I forgot it. You said that Ollie Wines is out of the side today. I think they're so much better for that. Like, the similar discussion that's going on with Essendon right now with Zach Merritt and Nick Martin not being able to play on ball is that Setterfield, Caldwell, those types Parrish can't play any other position, which pushes Merritt and Nick Martin out because they're more versatile. And Ollie Wines is one of those players that can only play on ball. I feel like their midfield, as good as Wines has been for them in the past, operates better when it's Rosie, Butters, Horn Francis, and Drew.
That's that conversation I always have with players and when we talk about draft picks, and it's like, who would you take in the draft sort of thing, and we go back retrospectively. That's kind of what I'm talking about there.
But Will Day has the versatility.
So, like,
did he start as a halfback?
Yeah. Okay. He was drafted as a halfback. So, like, looking for those sort of players that can come in and potentially change position, have that upside, can play in different positions. It's so much more beneficial. I feel like too many teams at times go, and people will say it's the opposite to this happens as well too much, but you can go for those, like, Parrish type midfielders or even Setterfield as a big bodied mid, but you really can't play them anywhere else.
Yeah.
So if they're not the highest quality, they'll hold you back.
True. That's fair. What weird question, but what is Zane Dersma? What was he drafted as? Because we haven't seen him really come on.
He was drafted as a mid forward.
Okay.
I think probably what they were thinking as far as like archetypically someone like a Christian Petrarca.
Those ones are always hit or miss, aren't they? Erasmus
Yeah.
was the same.
Yep, De Goey. I was always a little bit hesitant with Dersma, just because he was in that. I don't think he moves as well as that type of. I reckon he's more third tall than he is mid.
Yeah, he's a bit wiry, isn't he? He's not like explosive.
Yeah, he's not as explosive, and I don't think he's as good at ground level as some of those players, like a De Goey, for example, would be one. Petrarca.
Yeah. I mean, he's a bit further from the ground. I think he's 3 inches taller or 2 inches taller than both of those players.
Yeah, whereas I guess like if you look at the best players that play that sort of position, the Petrarca, Martin back in the day, Harley Reid's probably that prototype as well. Bailey Humphrey, they're all sort of high 180s. They don't really push over that 190 mark as much. I don't really know why that is. Yeah, a bit closer to the ground.
But Dersman's probably better aerially than some of those guys. Not maybe not all of them.
No, those guys are all good marks. Like you think of...
I mean, I think Dersman's
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, versus like a De Goey. I think De Goey is much more a ground level player than he is a high marking lead up type.
Yeah, when I see Dersma go up against, and like when he's got a contest and they'll compete in the air, he does pretty well to be able to bring the ball down, but then he's nowhere, which worries me because it means that he's not in that same conversation. Like if he went up in a marking contest against Caleb Sarong, for example, he might win the marking contest, sure, but if he doesn't, Sarong's going to get the ball every time.
In that same draft class, 2 great key forwards have come out of it and are really emerging at the moment. Nate Caddy was probably Essendon's best on ground against Freo, taking great marks, foot skills, absolutely elite.
Did you see those 2 kicks in the first quarter when he hit Kako and Peter Wright?
Oh, yeah, the field kicks,
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then Logan Morris last night taking the absolute piss. 19 years old, 20 years old, something like that. Who would you take? Caddy or Logan Morris?
Good question.
Yeah, you'd say first instinct is like Morris is the better performer, but he's also playing at the Brisbane Lions and not Essendon.
Yeah. To be honest, I did a redraft of that draft like a few weeks back, and I had Morris, and I partly did that on how he has performed, and I'd seen less of Caddy as well at that point. I'd probably take Caddy as we speak right now.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against it, but what a player Logan Morris is. Both incredible field kicks.
Yes.
Like they can unlock a forward line as a key forward.
Yeah. I mean, Morris is definitely, the fact that he kicked 5 goals last night, he's definitely getting better service, isn't he?
Yeah.
And probably since Danaher's gone, it looks like he's kind of gone to another level. Mm-hmm. Just super competitive. It's awesome. I think maybe Caddy, like you saw that moment, I think it was Draper was manning the mark on him and he just ran around him. I just took the piss. Just doing stuff like that. He's got everything.
Yeah, Simo says Nate Caddy has more upside. Barnesy says Caddy bit better athlete with that leap. Don't know.
They both got a pretty good leap, don't they? Maybe Caddy moves around the ground a little bit better.
Yeah, Caddy is a really good athlete. Yeah. How would you compare and contrast Zane and Willem Dersma? With the concerns that you just expressed about, concerns is probably over-egging it, but just some downsides or weaknesses you just said about Zane. Does Willem have those same attributes?
He does, as far as being the surety of position. What Willem doesn't have though, that I just mentioned about Zane, Willem picks up the ball off the ground really quickly. Mm-hmm. He's got that sort of I call it a snatch. Oh. Like the snatch movement, like in weightlifting.
Yeah.
To pick up
that's
the
where my
bar.
line went.
Like his movement of getting his hands to the ground to pick up the ball, reacting to the ball, and then taking it up is very fast. Whereas Zane's is a lot slower, and he's cleaner.
Yeah,
and a little bit smoother.
Who's better aerially?
Probably Zane.
Yeah, that was my impression too.
Yeah, he's a bit stronger.
Yeah, okay.
How would you rank the Dersmans? Like, where would you have them? Where do you think?
Willem's definitely the most talented.
Okay.
Then I'd say Xavier. I would say Xavier is the least talented of the 3 brothers.
It'd be reflected in the draft position too.
Yeah, but he's he's definitely obviously at this point the best performed. Like I think he's a very good AFL winger. Xavier
I thought
Dersma.
he was going to be a great player, Xavier Dersma, because he was in that same draft class as Butters and Rosie, and he was almost like the third horseman in that sort of triage, and just hasn't lived up to it. Again, goes to a shit club and can't really perform, I suppose. But at Port Adelaide, when they were...
Oh, you mean with Essendon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Port Adelaide with that sort of prelim area side, great home and away team. I thought Xavier Dersma was a really good weapon for them.
I mean, he's coming to his own at Essendon.
If his team is
He
functioning,
got subbed off the other night.
Yeah, he's injured though.
Was he?
Hammy, yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been seduced by outside players who do well in their first season because they are playing in at least a functional team, and things get harder for them as their career goes on. Not all the time, but sometimes. There's a lot of players like that who have done well. Remember how good Daniel Rich was in his first season?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And what is happening in this game? Why is it so low scoring?
It's kind of good though.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you would have wanted was like one of these teams getting out to like a 5-goal lead.
Here we go. They're out here. Sheldrick with a releasing handball. Ball switch to the outside. Now, Campbell is a great player. If he can get his hands on it, he's got options right ahead of him. Handball over the top. Papley from 50. Shocking kick.
What have they done there?
Campbell had to back himself there.
Yes.
I was just about to say Sydney have probably been the more compelling when they've had the ball out of these two teams, and then they did that.
Can you remember Campbell's game against GWS last year when he came on as sub?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
He just tore it up.
Far out. I love him.
Yeah. No, I'm a massive fan. He was a top pick, wasn't he?
He was up there. I can't remember what year or what pick it was, but it was high-ish.
I feel like he was a top 5 pick.
Top 5. Yeah, he might have
Campbell,
been.
yeah, he was. Pick 5 or 6.
Yeah.
What's his first name? Brady.
I think
He's a beautiful kick.
Hawthorn bid on him. Was it 4 Logan and 5 McDonald? Sorry, yeah, they're the same guy. Logan and then Campbell, 5.
Was that in the same draft?
Yeah, I reckon it
2020.
was 2020. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like that was a bad draft to have 2 picks in the top 10. Just on.
Oh, he was in an academy match, so technically
Of course
didn't
he
have
was.
it.
Of course
Yeah.
he was. Yeah.
5th pick in the 2020 draft.
There you go.
Yep.
That was my recall, bro. Subscribe.
That was incredible stuff. But yeah, Sydney love those technical kind of players, don't they?
Great foot skills, etc.
Yep.
Gussie Sheldrick kicks it behind. 2 goals, 8. And Papley limps off. He's battled through injury already this year.
Sydney are really kicking their behinds.
Speaking on Sydney. Speaking on Sydney.
That's going to get the rounds in our house this week for sure.
Jesse Detoli, not too far away. Anyone excited to see Jesse?
Oh, that'd be good. I actually kind of forgot about
Who's
him.
Jesse Detoli? Sorry.
He was their first pick.
Yeah.
In the draft last year, so first rounder. I guess it would have been the last pick of the first round, wouldn't it? Based on
yeah, it would have been because Brisbane's would have been absorbed.
yes, or they would have traded it away.
Are you live
that's a
streaming
good
Big
point.
Country
I don't
versus SA deal?
No, because I'm going to the game
When is that?
Ooh, flex.
next weekend.
What day?
I will just bring that up as we speak. Just give me a moment. I'll let you know. But
I've got a large
I'm live
weekend
streaming
planned.
every Champs game that's not in Melbourne. I want to get the feel of going to Marvel
Yeah.
and watching that game. It's been a weird Champs. Like South Australia's already played 3 games. They pretty much already won the Champs.
Yeah.
And everybody else has played 1 game essentially.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah.
I think, is it Vic Country that can topple them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. They're the only team that they haven't played.
Yeah. Okay.
And then if they did a clean sweep, but I just don't think they will. To be
Yeah,
honest.
fair.
It's been incredible.
Blakey sets up a Marty for a set shot directly in front. 10 minutes to go in the second term here.
Yeah, so that's Sunday the 29th of June at Marvel Stadium. So I'll go along to that. I'll try to.
What time is it?
It's at 11 a.m.
Okay.
That was a real Jolafati. He's missed.
Nice.
2 goals, 9.
Yeah, really kicking themselves out of it here.
Were Carlton particularly inaccurate today? I know Geelong kicked 6-15 last night.
They were
2 goals, 9.
Carlton were early.
Yeah, okay.
And
yeah,
they,
that's
they
right.
probably
And in
could
the
have had a
third
lead
as
up
well.
on us.
Then they stopped
Yeah.
scoring in general. I think that's what it was. There were 2 goals,
Yeah.
7. Yeah.
From when I started watching, as I said, I came back inside and it was like end of the first quarter, start of the second. It was all North Melbourne, but they'd already kicked a lot of points.
Yeah. By the way, earlier, Rogue Riot, g'day, Rogie,
Rogue.
says we're going to get Westicled next week. West Coast is playing their first game in Melbourne since I've moved here at Marvel Stadium against Collingwood. I'll just remind him what happened in 2022
Are you going along?
because that is all we have to cling to. Unfortunately, it's Drewsy's birthday that night, so I'm going to be watching it over his shoulder at the pub.
It's going to be a fun night.
Oh, that's a weird image.
Guys. See, North have got Hawthorn next week.
Clip that.
Any chance?
Nah.
No, I agree.
It's in Tassie, isn't it?
It is in Tassie.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to
nah.
raise the white flag in that one.
Yeah.
That's not the sort of game, though. When I said we could win half of our games, I haven't actually
that
gone
one.
through and nutted that out.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Did you play Geelong down there this year, or was that last season?
In Tassie?
Yeah, at Bloodstone.
Oh,
Like it was last
Blunston.
year.
Yeah, I think we did.
Was
Yeah.
that this year? Was it?
Hayward dribbles on along the
Surely.
floor.
Hey, we got a goal.
That was very laconic, wasn't it?
A lot of low scoring, inaccurate games we've streamed on this channel.
I don't know what laconic means.
Laconic is when somebody looks effortless, or if you describe someone as laconic, it means they look like they're not trying that hard.
Oh, I thought it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I meant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
like they say, Mark Waugh.
Nonchalant. I was going to go with either nonchalant
Yeah, okay.
or laconic.
Yeah,
Where do you learn
Yeah,
these
that
big
works.
words?
Dictionary.com.
Yeah.
We just go and Google shit, and that doesn't make sense.
So he did it. It was just very like,
Laconic.
Laconic.
I'm gonna start
watch him.
using that.
It was just very like, don't really care.
Yeah, very casual,
Yeah.
which is a synonym. A synonym is one word that's like another.
I know that one. I learned that.
Do you know what an article
Goes
is?
on a
Druzy?
cake.
What an article is?
Yeah,
Like a
yeah.
news article?
No, like in the English language. Why am I doing this? Let's not do
Tell
this.
me what
Actually,
article means.
it's like before a word, before a noun, like the or a.
Oh, I actually didn't know that one.
Yeah,
An article.
it's like a grammatical term.
True
used to
English.
used to teach English.
Oh, true. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, well, that's why you know all these words, bro.
Yeah.
Hayward. They're
Hayward.
starting to.
Two in 30 seconds, Hayward's kicked it.
This is alarm bells for Port
It
because
is.
they were getting away with it to some extent, but Sydney have pretty much been the better team all
This is
night.
what I'm saying though with Port Adelaide's midfield. When they're not winning the stoppages, look how easy they are just to walk the ball out. I saw Willem Drew went off the ground with a cut. So you've currently got Manny Liddy, Jason Horne-Francis, and Connor Rosé in there.
Yeah. Liddy.
Is he a mid-season draftee?
He is.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's 25-12 inside 50 Sydney's way, which reflects what I was sort of observing there. Clearance are actually even. It's probably just the quality of clearance that is the difference between these two sides. Sydney are plus 17 contested ball. That's a walloping for a half. That's a walloping.
Yeah, no real excuse for that with the midfield that they have. I know it goes around the ground, but you'd think they'd have a bit of field position. And, you know, Willie Rioli and Sam Powell-Pepper, like, highly talented, but I don't know. Why can't they just get it going? What's going
Well, they're
on?
not getting the ball inside 50.
That's what I mean, though. Like, with the midfield that
Right.
Port have, no excuse. Hinkley out.
What do you think about Bergman and
He's gone.
his trade value?
Bergman.
Feel like it's a bit inflated.
He's out of contract, isn't he? Is he?
I'm
Yeah, I
pretty sure
think so.
Port have offered him like 8 years,
Or is he
big money or something.
I think he might be a
Crazy,
free
yeah.
agent.
I think he's a good player.
I think he's a free agent.
I think he's a highly talented
Who
player.
would you compare him to?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Bergman.
I'll rephrase it. Who would you rather, Miles Bergman or Luke Ryan?
Why?
I want to know
What's the relevance?
I think
Similar
I'm not going to answer that question because it's immature.
It's facetious.
Yeah, it is
laconic.
facetious. Miles
It's
Bergman,
very
I think,
cromulent.
I think at the top of his potential would be that sort of like taller midfielder. Like I think he could go in and be
Houston.
He's spent a bit of time on a wing, hasn't he?
yeah.
Not that that's the same thing, but
Maybe like an Ed Richards type midfield.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I haven't seen him enough to look at him in that light.
He's got really good speed and agility. So that makes me think midfield. It doesn't 100% say that he can play midfield, and he's tall. Like I think he's about 190. So
yeah.
Butters down the line. Powell-Pepper can't grab it. Richards on Francis. Will it be advantage? No. Back to Powell-Pepper. Got some comments here. Barnesy saying Port's future looks bleak if Bergman leaves and maybe Butters leaves the next year.
what if they get Nasiah though?
I don't know if he solves their problems.
No,
I mean, it's great to have that talent with one going out. Sorry, we're talking about if they get Desire
from
and
Willem
Butters
Drew.
leaves. Are we talking about
That's
that?
got to be 50.
yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
He's marked the footy and you've just tackled him. Again,
Perhaps.
refer to last week. Look at the rule book, mate.
He's got a grommet coming out of his ear. Do you remember those grommets?
Yeah.
That's
Back in
another
the
word.
day.
He's Wallace's friend.
Yeah, that's the only grommet.
yeah, we
I
sell
know
them
of.
at Bunnings. Grommets.
Yeah, but they were things that went in your ear.
Oh, I don't know what I thought. Why I thought you meant the ones we
I
saw
don't
at
know what I'm
Bunnings.
saying.
Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were Rabbit.
Yeah.
Great film.
Yeah, I haven't
Never
seen
seen
it.
that.
No. we're adults.
But young talent at Port Adelaide.
We watch Harry Potter.
If they were to get, say, an Osaya come across, they didn't lose Bergman, let's say. Looking at this guy here, Jace Burgoyne, there is some young talent there.
Oh,
There
yeah.
is. There's just so many like pawns out there, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depends on what website you go to.
Ha. You said 20 seconds ago you're an adult. Come on, bro.
Yeah.
Need to be less
You
iconic on
knew
each other.
I was bluffing.
What do you think Butters is going to do?
I would leave, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think he should leave.
Like, I don't know when this Tassie team's going to come in, but I feel like Port Adelaide, Carlton, those types that have stars on the park, but too many just passengers.
You reckon we just need to pick their good players out?
Well, I don't know. I feel like Carlton and Port Adelaide are similar.
Free kick. It has to be a free kick.
I think Port,
No.
in a theory, a better place than
Holding the ball,
Carlton.
surely.
Carlton's,
I agree.
Carlton's stars are just a little bit further along in terms of age, whereas
Yeah.
Port Adelaide's stars are young enough that if they don't need high draft picks to be able to fix the quality of that 22 because they've already got that top end nucleus, at least in the middle part of the ground. Maybe they can use some elite tools for sure, but history shows you don't need pick 1, 2, and 3 to do that. I think Port Adelaide are off to a really good. Let me phrase this carefully. If Port were on looking to reset, I think they would do a lot more efficiently than Carlton and get to where they need to go quicker.
Yeah. Oh, they've definitely got, with their current list, they've got more younger, like you said, and also I think like more high end, like exciting X Factor players.
Absolutely.
Like Horn Francis just came on screen there. Like
Yeah.
Obviously him, Butters. It's a bit more electric, isn't it?
Yeah.
Than what Carlton are offering.
So
Yeah.
Damien Hardwick said, like, when he joined Gold Coast, that they had 80% of a premiership winning list already. How much of a premiership winning list does Port Adelaide have?
It's hard to say off the top of your head, isn't it?
It's hard to imagine this group winning one in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
In-
Are we assuming that the main guys stay there, like Butters?
Let's say
Yes.
Butters stays.
Let's assume they stay. Yeah.
I reckon this team today, I don't think Zerk Thatcher's there. I don't think Radigalier's there. Maybe Lockie Jones is. Sin. Like, them four are 50-50s for me. Yeah, Burgoyne will be. Farrell would be if he stays. Oh, he's re-signed, so he'll stay. Like Jackson Mead, maybe not. Pepper. Like, there's just so many names on this list, and I'm not even on the bench yet. Like, Burton, he'll be gone. Vizentini, too early to say. Manny Liddy, too early to say. There's just so many players on this list I'm just, like, not sure about.
In fairness, every premiership team has a bunch of players you never thought would be premiership players, and some of them end up winning 3 at Richmond. For
Like who?
instance, I don't think Jason Castagna would be a player you would have looked at and gone, yeah, he's going to be in a premiership team. For instance. At West Coast, I'm trying to think who our bottom players were that day. I mean, Nathan Vardy.
I think like the examples you're giving there though are teams that had like a lot of balance.
Yeah.
And I feel like this Port Adelaide team, when you look at their role players, like they're not really balancing anything out. Like, I don't know, like I feel like most of the top end teams list build wise are going to kind of like a 2 or a 3 tall structure, and then they have like almost like a dozen small forwards. I feel like the top sides and ones that can like push into the midfield. So it's midfield depth / high forwards, small forwards, and like that's the position also. Apart from the tools we kind of talked about in the defense for Port, like who are their A grade small forwards?
Well, Willie Rioli
Rioli's
is.
pretty damn good.
Yeah, yep. I'll give you that one.
Power Pepper probably more medium sized, but it's
Yeah.
inconsistent. Like, there's games Power Pepper plays or played pre-ACL injury where I'm like, this guy could be one of the best small forwards.
Yeah, he's very
in the
powerful.
comp.
Yeah, no,
Like,
I
how do you
like Power
stop him?
Pepper. Sort of a different type though, isn't he? Like he's
Yeah. Yeah.
like those kind of worker guys. Like I'm trying to think who they like. Richards isn't that.
Yeah, after Power Pepper and Rioli, you really got to...
You're scraping the barrel. Where like I feel a lot of the GWSs and the Hawthorns, and I'm not necessarily saying that their model is 100% going to work.
Isaac
Heaney
Heaney.
hurt himself.
Heaney has flown, didn't immediately get up his off shot right
I thought
now.
he was holding his leg when he landed there.
I hope not.
But back to that point on like grand final sides have spuds, and you referred to Nathan Vardy and Billy Frampton comes to mind for Collingwood. Feels like those players are just like the last piece of the puzzle. Not necessarily to get them over the line, but like, we need you to play this role. Nathan Vardy, he played solo ruck that day, didn't he?
So, no, Lycett and Vardy.
Oh, Lycett and Vardy. There you go. So second ruck. Billy Frampton didn't touch the footy on grand final day, but just locked down. Whereas when you got too many of those types of players, you're stinky. And you're kicking 2 goals in a quarter against Sydney at home.
I do agree. I wasn't pushing back on necessarily what you were saying. I was kind of adding nuance to the fact that, sometimes you don't need to like replace your entire, back six with top end picks. Sometimes you're closer to having a premiership quality team than you think if you have the elite nucleus, which is critical.
I'm going to get some water and take a lick.
All right, cool.
Go for it, son. Sydney again here. Goulden's starting to get a little bit of the footy. He looks a bit rusty, doesn't he, Goulden? Like he's not quite there.
Yeah. It's always going to happen.
100%. 18 points. 1 minute, 50 seconds to go.
Just getting back to I think it was JD Eagles asked, do Carlton rebuild at this point? Do you think it's fraught with danger? Like jettisoning, presumably like trading players on purpose to access the draft now?
It's such a grey area.
Yeah. I don't know.
What were you going to say?
I feel like in the modern game, just committing yourself to a lengthy rebuild is such a painful task. I mean, we support clubs who are at different points in the rebuilds, but like it is just such a long period of time. And if I'm Carlton, I'm nervous about potentially saying, all right, let's pull up stumps, trade what we have within reason and just hit the draft hard.
Yep.
I don't know if I'd trust Carlton to successfully come out of that given their 25-year history.
I totally agree. I feel like the more successful model now is actually not doing a really deep rebuild. I mean, we're seeing it with Richmond. We don't know how that's going to go. It looks like they've hit the draft really well, but you kind of go back to that middle 2000s period and you had teams like, I say middle 2000s, maybe a little bit later than that. You had teams that really went into heavy rebuild, like the Saints after their little tilt. The Kangaroos went full-blown rebuild.
Oh, West Coast did one in that era.
Yeah, you guys were a little bit, I feel like, less deliberate about it. Yeah. Because you went after Kelly. You were successful in like 28.
Sorry, I was actually referring to our previous one, post-Judd and Cousins, which was also not deliberate. They left.
I feel like teams like Geelong, probably Collingwood to an extent, sort of went, we don't actually, like we're good now. We can sort of leverage the fact that we're good now and just make smart decisions with our list, go to other clubs, look for spare players on lists that we think can do something, go after those big fish when we can. I know not every team can do that, but that seems to be more of a successful model than the deep cut.
Absolutely. And you look at Collingwood and Geelong and these teams don't stay down the bottom of the ladder and they endeavour to avoid it at all costs. So I think if Carlton can stay stable, that allows them to potentially lure those big fish, which I don't think happens if they commit to a full lengthy rebuild
because they've got leverage as the club that they are. Like they pull huge numbers to games. Like if you were a player, any player should want to play for Carlton. Yeah, just based on that, I just think they need to get they just need to get almost like it feels like a little bit deeper with them, doesn't it? Like club decisions and ideology and stuff like that. Yeah. Even, I don't know, like if we want to have the conversation about Michael Voss, like I'm not sure if he's tactically up to it compared to the best coaches in the league as well.
Yeah. Sorry, one other point I'll make about modern day rebuilding is it's great if you have the first picks in the first 5 to 10, but with how compromised it is now, I mean, father-son, it happens a bit. The academies, particularly the northern academies, there's more teams and that's only going to grow. Sometimes, and not sometimes, most recently, like the last 2 wooden spoon teams, I think of, it certainly happened for West Coast. We re-entered the draft with our second pick at pick 30. Outside of having pick 1, we weren't in a great draft position. So that further, I think, disincentivizes a team being like, all right, let's just gut the whole place.
You guys have been crap for years and you haven't really got that much out of the draft other than the Harley draft. It's not like you've had multiple picks inside the top 5.
We've had to trade down. Obviously, there was the awful one last year, but in general, like we traded down and got Jimby and Hewitt, and I think in isolation, that was a really smart move because we needed quality and quantity, and we don't have the quantity of picks. Yeah. And nor does any team.
The thing that always gets overlooked in those rebuilds too, that you can be a team like North and get multiple first round picks. But if you don't, if the clubs if you don't have the educators actually on your list that can teach those guys, they'll probably never be. There'll be exceptions to that. You always get exceptions where like you'll draft one guy who's just a maniac at training and wanting to be the best. But largely you'll get these top picks and they'll sort of fade away into obscurity. I feel like it's not a coincidence that North continuously draft top 5 picks and they're sort of good, but they're not great. And I feel like that's because of the rest of our list.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of self-driven ones at least, like Sheasel is self-driven.
Exactly.
Dacos, I think it would have been a start anywhere because of the mindset as much as the player.
Exactly. So then it comes down to that. It's like, what are you recruiting? And I think that's where recruiters these days are actually, with the times that they're allowed to train and stuff like that, with how much contact hours clubs actually get with their players, they start to go, well, we're probably better looking at mentality than actual performance in some ways, or not performance, but skill and attributes. And that sort of thing.
It doesn't get spoken about enough. I'm sure it does, like in the actual industry.
Yeah.
But the mentality piece of assessing players, which is impossible to do accurately, but I think those driven, insane, obsessed types are ones that are worth their weight in gold. Like someone like a Pendlebury, for instance.
Yeah, he was never not going to make it.
Yeah, exactly. I have to tinkle now.
Go for it, mate. Just me and you, Drews.
Just me and you. Like
That's
the
the
good
way we
old
like it.
days.
Is that half time?
That is half time. I was just going to say we'll get into our report card once Jesse gets back from his tinkle.
I'll give a couple of stats for the game. Do you want to have a guess, Drewsy? Who's the highest disposal getter on the ground?
I'd just say Butters.
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
He has had
I'm a genius.
21 disposals and a goal. He was good, particularly from after quarter time. I felt he really came into it.
He sort of like... I find Butters and Rosie get the footy a lot in the same position sometimes. That sort of area between the centre circle and halfback. I feel like they're always just like zigging and zagging their way there. And Horne-Francis is the one that's more damaging forward of centre.
Definitely.
Butters has been everywhere today, to be fair.
Yeah. Who would you take from that midfield? You could take one to Freo. Actually, no, not to Freo, because I just want to know who you think is the best. Who would you take?
I like the way that Butters goes about it more than the other two. I feel like Horne-Francis is a bit, I don't know, I just don't like his aura.
Okay.
Is
that like the background of the North stuff?
I think so, yeah.
Fair.
Bit of a sook.
Bit of a sook, yeah.
A little bit. Great player. I don't know him personally. I'm sure if I met him, he'd be a great bloke. But
North fans are a little bit like that. Yeah, no, I think that's fair based on the history for sure. I think he's probably, in a way, I think he's the most talented of the three.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for me, it would be Francis or Butters.
Yeah. God, but Francis, like, he can tear us up.
Yeah, I know, it's
tough. And then, Rosie, great, slick player.
He's always kind of the third one though, isn't he? I think most people would have Rosie as the third, even though, and like I almost think he is better in that team. He is better at halfback.
I wonder what Port fans would say.
It's a good question.
If there's any Port fans in the chat, let us know.
I would love.
Oh, there is a Port fan in the chat. Rosie has been our best player this season. People were commenting on our mid-season All-Australian saying, like, how is Rosie not in the side?
I suppose they mean as a halfback, right?
Yeah.
I suppose you got to remember too, like you are looking, like Port Adelaide have had a pretty poor year. So it's hard to crowbar too many of their players into the team, even though Rosie has been good in that position. Butters obviously missed the start of the season, so he's probably been less consistent. I feel like Horne-Francis has been a letdown in 2025.
So young though.
So young, yeah.
We forget that with these physically built types.
Yeah.
We're seeing it with Harley. We were seeing it with Sheasel to some extent because he started so well. Sorry, it was just completely come into this conversation.
Very seamless.
But it was. You wouldn't think I just tinkled. Didn't even leave my seat for it. But Horne-Francis, I think, because he's this power type, gets judged as though he's the complete package. So I would say there's still a lot of scope for how much he can improve, which is probably not true of Butters. He can improve certainly, but I would say the scope is where Horne-Francis.
I think Butters is pretty much right at
he's right there.
The pointy end, isn't he? Just on consistency. I just asked Drewsy the question: who would you take of the three right now?
Yeah,
not to West Coast though, because I feel like that brings in age. I don't want to do that.
We can say like expansion club. Like if you're expansion club, I think I'd go Butters because he is. But that's might be my personality, like the proven quantity. Like he's already as good.
You know what you're going to get.
Exactly. And Horne-Francis, I think he could shade him, definitely. But I'd probably err on the side of safety.
I think the question you have to ask yourself with that is, of those power type mid-forward players that Horn Francis is, of the next generation that's sort of going to shape maybe the premierships in the next sort of 5 or so years, is he better than the next best? And then where does Butters sit to his type? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like Butters is more of a big game player as well. Like, he's always going to show up, I feel like.
I get that vibe from Horn Francis.
do I.
I don't know about the track record, but yeah, they're lucky to have both for the time being, at least.
We're just about halfway through the season, so let's get into a bit of a report card. Give each team a grade based on sort of where they were expected to be, all that type of stuff.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, let's be clear about how we're doing this. I think that's really important to start off a video like this. In my head, I feel like we're grading teams based on expectations, maybe their internal expectations we can kind of project. Like, well, what would they have hoped for this year? How are they comparing to that? And I think we can take into account mitigating factors. For instance, an injury crisis would probably save a few teams from an F for me, for example. Would you guys say you're aligned with that line of thinking?
Yeah, I agree.
No, you have to appreciate context, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with the Crows.
Yeah, let's go alphabetical.
Dylan?
I mean, for me, the Crows, I was big on them, so I think they had reasonable expectations coming in, but you'd have to say sitting now, I think, at third, as we currently
Something
speak.
like that,
Yeah.
Everything really is just
fourth.
purring.
I want to say fourth. I
They
think
might be fourth.
Collingwood, Brisbane, Geelong.
Right, yeah. So they've gone into fourth. If they finished in this position, and we're only judging them off the front half of the year, the way that they've played too, I think it has to be an A or an A+.
Yeah.
I would agree. What do you think they would have expected this year? Like, they're a team that nearly made the finals, then took its backward step. I think a passing grade for them almost would have been, let's get into finals, potentially win one. They're certainly in a great position to do that. I would say A+ as well.
I think that they would have gone into the season thinking top 8, and now they're pushing for a top 4 position.
Yeah.
Yeah, well above sort of expectations. For me, being in the top 4, playing the way they are, I'd give them an A+.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all aligned there.
Top mark, really.
Yeah.
As good as you can get.
Brisbane?
Oh, that's hard.
Well, so the context, obviously, they're the reigning premiers. The flow of their season has been interesting. It's been in contrast to last year where started poorly. People sort of slowly started to give them credit as they went on this rampaging run. And this year they've coasted a little bit more. Haven't played full, complete games for the most part. You know, they beat Geelong the first time with a big comeback. They beat West Coast with a comeback. Nonetheless, they sit in the top 2 and have just claimed their biggest scalp of the year. I think they've beaten Geelong twice, but now doing that again in Geelong, I think that is a huge stride for them. I don't know, they didn't need to prove themselves, but I think they're sitting very pretty.
I think something that comes into my mind here with the Lions is that they've been quite easy to beat at the Gabba. They've lost to GWS, Collingwood. I'm not sure if they've lost to anyone else.
That might be all of it. They did nearly... the 2 games I referenced, Geelong and West Coast, were both at the Gabba.
Yeah.
So they were shaky.
Yeah. I feel like the Lions are a side that are just going to make it to September and then they'll really get going. Played great against Geelong last night. That was probably their best game I've seen them play this season.
I do agree. Like, they don't seem as impenetrable as they sort of seemed at the back end of last year. I'm not sure if I pronounced that word correctly.
I don't know. I liked it. Impenetrable.
But,
no, you did. You know it.
I think what you've got to consider too is the unearthing of like the improvement to some of their maybe bottom tier players as well. Like, not that Logan Morris was seen as a bottom tier player, but he's gone to another level.
He's emerged.
Jasper Fletcher,
Yeah,
I feel is another one
that
like
kid.
that. And then in their top grade, like McCluggage looks better than he has previous seasons. They brought in Levi Ashcroft as well. So
Cam Rayner's playing career best footy.
yeah, exactly. So there's not a lot of negativity other than, okay, maybe they're not playing 4 quarters. Is that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that gives them upside. It's
Yes,
like they've coasted it and they're in the top 2. I don't think they could have asked really for too much more. I would almost think it was a red flag if they were 15-0.
But I feel like in looking at those first 2 teams we've discussed, like if Adelaide were doing what Brisbane were, you'd be more concerned. But as a reigning premier, I think this is fine.
Yeah, proven ability to hit top speed in finals.
Yeah, I think they will. And like guys like Kyle Oman as well, still really like can hit their straps. I'm going to give the Lions a B, straight B, just because they won the flag last year. I feel like they have levels to go yet. This is semester 1 report card. I feel like semester 2 they can win the flag.
So you just want more in that backup. I'm going A.
I just feel like they have so many more levels to go, Brisbane, and that's scary.
I'm going to go A because I kind of thinking about the position they're in, top 2, outright top 2, just claimed a big scalp. For me, they couldn't have asked for much more.
I'll give them a B+.
That's fine. It's good to have variety.
Carlton, ready? 3, 2, 1, F.
I was about to just say shit. Like I forgot we're doing letters.
How good is it?
We just lost 3 subscribers.
Yeah, well, Carlton were a side that when we did our pre-season predictions, I left them out of the 8. Dill, you left them out of the 8. I'm not sure where you had them, Jesse, but everyone was just like, the Blues, this is the year, like top 4.
Baggers.
Because, yeah.
So are we saying that was their expectation? I think top 4 would be like top 4 or bust this year.
Their fans were almost like expecting to be top 4 based on the fact that they haven't been a top 4 premiership contender in so long, I feel like. And I have never really massively rated Carlton. They had some good patches in the past few years, but have also shown the ability to drop leads consistently. I don't really rate their list, and this year it's getting found out. They lost to North Melbourne today at the MCG. I'm giving them an F.
Yeah, easy. Easiest one. I mean, I suppose the only thing that would move me away from that is the fact that, I tipped them to finish 12th, and that's probably about where they are, right? They've kind of gone expectation on what I've thought, but I do feel like the AFL community had them a lot higher than that.
I think it's best to get in the mind of the club and try. We're trying to project onto them what would they have wanted, and I think with their list position. And there's so many mature players in the prime of their career, and a lot of them are stars as well. I think top 4 or bust is a realistic thing for them to have expected. I will acknowledge they have had injuries, they have dealt with them, but then I still think their worst footy has been awful. And I wrote down a D on my list here because I did this before they lost to North Melbourne today, and I think that might relegate them to F.
Well, they've lost to Richmond. Which is really unthinkable.
Yes.
They've lost to Richmond and North Melbourne.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Albeit I would say North Melbourne were playing a bit
There's
good football
photos
now.
of their fans crying in the crowd. I love that.
Oh, it's just get it into my veins.
We're for all fans on here on True Footy. They've just copped a drive by. But to be fair, it was a bad day for Carlton today.
Carlton are one of those clubs that
who's got better for them this season? Who's like Cooper Lord?
I'm not minded Motlop. He's a bit of a whipping boy for Carlton fans, but I think we are
George Hewitt.
Oh yeah, good one.
George Hewitt.
I think we move on from Carlton to their crosstown rivals in Collingwood, who didn't make finals last year. They sit first on the ladder with 2 losses. They have been the sexiest team to watch this year, defensively sound. Some of their older players, Sidebottom, Elliott, Pendlebury contributing, is an A+ for me for the Pies.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any disagreements with that? I mean, what would we say Collingwood wanted this year? I think off-season moves indicate what they intend or are aiming for. Getting in Houston, getting in Perryman, they're going all out for the now. I'd say it's flag or bust for them. They sit clear on top of the ladder.
I just thought this would take for Collingwood so much longer to gel. I thought they'd be sitting somewhere, maybe even like outside the 8. Coming into this period, and then they'd have like a run at the end of the season when it started to click, like with those new pieces coming in. You got to remember too, like they went Josh Dacos to the half back line, which was like a new move, new position for him. Dacos is getting tagged every week. Darcy Moore's in career best form. Like it's just everything is going so well. It can't be anything other than an A+ for me.
They've shown up to the Gabba and beat Brisbane quite easily. My first game in Melbourne, we watched from home, but Collingwood versus Hawthorn, it felt like the intensity of that game was like a bit of a final. And Collingwood put that much distance in quality, I thought, against Hawthorn. I think they are the standard. I'm not saying they're going to win the flag, but I think they're the standard. I'll go A+.
Yeah.
Essendon. Where do we see them? Injury-ravelled season. I don't even know if that's a term, but we'll go with it.
It's actually reviled.
I like the direction Essendon are taking, and you might think, why would you like that? They're stinking it up. But I like that they're going, this is a rebuild. We need to figure out who the players are on our list. And even though the results haven't been good for them, I feel like they actually have direction for the first time in a while. And whilst their season hasn't been good, I think giving them a flat C, given their circumstances, is pretty fair.
I totally agree. I said in the preseason that the biggest thing that could plague them was the fact that Brad Scott won't play young players. And he's totally gone back. Like when he was at North, he didn't do anything like this. It was always, he had the boys, like he had his boys, and he'd play them consistently. It was really frustrating. And I thought he might do that again. I think what Essendon have, given the compromisation of the draft, they're a team that's actually got some of those picks, like in NGA players like Kako. They've been able to benefit from that as well. So they're bringing in young players consistently, going heavy at the draft, the mid-season, what we saw there. Getting a lot of games into players, and it's going to be big for them, I think, but it's not going to be in the next couple of years.
Yeah, so interestingly, I think Hoyne said that they were the worst 6 and 7 side by percentage. The worst 6 and 7 side in like 100 years or something like that. There's been one team that was worse like 100 years ago or something like that.
From percentage?
Percentage specifically, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
77%.
Wow.
Which I think there's been some blowouts. We've seen a couple recently. Geelong was most recent. Bulldogs, 91 points. Other than that, I feel like they've actually been, first of all, they're one of the youngest teams by selected 22 most weeks. But they've been kind of plucky. Like I thought they were plucky against Fremantle. I feel like their brand, it's starting to show. I would also agree with Flat C. I don't think they could have realistically expected much more. It's going to be a long-term build for them.
UNC, did you, Drews?
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with that.
Yeah.
Triple
I was going to
C.
say, I was going to go more like B or C+.
Who have their best wins coming against? Port
Well,
Adelaide.
that's true. We're basing it on season wins.
And we
too,
haven't
aren't
seen growth from last year. Like there's been injuries. They've got some mitigating circumstances, but I don't know if they've meaningfully improved.
And
so I
just
don't know
to
about
tie a
B.
ribbon on it, I was going to say that like there's still like as far as they're bringing in the kids, but there's still massive list holes. Like I don't know what they're going to do with that midfield. They have to nail that in the draft. So yeah,
Thankfully, they got 2 top 10 picks as it currently stands.
they do, but they have to get it right.
Yeah.
The Fremantle Dockers are next. We currently sit 6th on the ladder. Bit of a slow start to the year, but we've now won 5 in a row. We went on a bit of a run earlier in the year and won 4 in a row. I think there's been a lot of growth. Players like Jackson, Sarong, Brayshaw having career best years as they enter their prime. I think our defence is set up really well. The emergence of Paddy Boss in that forward line to complement Tracy, and then the addition of Shea Bolton, Murphy Reid. We've got a really exciting side. I think there was some real disappointment early in the season with some really terrible losses, particularly against Sydney, St Kilda and the D's. I'm still a bit like, I don't feel like we've proven ourselves yet, even though we've won 5 in a row. I would probably give Freo...
D?
No. B?
This is nuts.
I reckon I'd give us a B.
Yeah, I was thinking. I actually had you guys to be in the top 4 this
Yeah.
year. I know that might have been going a little bit early on. I think the one player that you've got to give Freo and Mulligan for is not having Hayden Young.
Yeah.
I think that's actually been massive for their season overall. Probably other than that, you haven't had any major injuries for too long.
Yeah, nothing crazy like Nathan O'Driscoll types and
Yeah.
Jager O'Meara that provide that depth through our midfield.
I think you're spot on though. I think it's like everything looks pretty good, and if you look at all the players that you'd want to be heading in that right direction, going up, they all are. It's just when does the point come where you just bank those wins against better teams?
Yeah, well, like this time last year we beat like Sydney away, and that was like a big result that sort of felt like it legitimised us. We beat GWS and Gold Coast away, but I really want to see us like beat like a Collingwood or a Brisbane or a Geelong to really. I think.
So B.
Yeah, I think a B.
I would agree with that. I would say that what would Fremantle have hoped from this year? I would have said return to finals, and I'd say winning a final would have been pretty outstanding. So let's say they finish where they are now, lose the first final. What would I think that would be? I'd say that's a B. You get back to the finals.
Coming into this year was to win the flag internally.
Yeah, right. Well, that's hilarious. But anyway, 110%, little bit of lacking potency. I think as Druzy sort of touched on, just claiming a scalp would be something that elevates them in legitimacy. But look, they sit 6th. They got a home game against St Kilda. They should start favourites. They're on track to play finals. It's an easy B for me.
I think we are at where we expected to be, maybe a little bit lower, but we've got a lot of upside. So I think, B is fair.
Cool.
Who have we got next? I think we just keep rolling through it unless something crazy happens in the game. Geelong sit 3rd on the ladder, made a prelim last year. They're obviously contending this year. Great game against Collingwood. I was at that game. I think they're right in the driver's seat to be a team playing on the last day in September. Bailey Smith comes in. Max Holmes, Ollie Dempsey, the way that they're playing, had a disappointing game against Brisbane last night, but I'm pretty comfortable to give them an A.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Geelong is one of those clubs that is so consistently a contender that for them, it's really about just building that position going into finals as Papley lines up, building that position to play multiple home finals and get into the grand final. I think that's where Geelong's mind is. And I think to be sitting 3rd, coming off a disappointing loss against the Brisbane Lions, they kicked 6 goals, 15. that was a bit ugly for them. But generally speaking, I think if the ladder stayed the way it is, they would back themselves to be a good chance. The percentage is 127%. Flag contender, I'd give them an A.
I think if you came into the start of the season with the Cats, you'd be saying, okay, the weakness area is probably the midfield. And then they bring in Bailey Smith.
And
Max Holmes just
Yeah.
goes to like a completely different level. They've probably got the best midfield in the comp now, somehow. The one thing I would say, though, that worries me a little bit is the punch off the back line as far as like winning the ball back. 'Cause I don't feel like Tom Stewart is at the same level as he has been. So it feels like they've had a bit of a regression there.
Potentially.
It was on
I feel
show
like-
last night, I thought.
Yeah, I feel like they have to get him back into that top end form to be able to do anything in the.
Maybe like Zach Guthrie as well.
Yeah, and like they've had outs there. Like Henry's been out, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And Sam de Koning has also, he's out for like 5 or 6 weeks now as well. So just looking maybe a little bit threadbare in that back line in parts. And I feel like that they'll need to get those guys back if they are going to do anything. But you're right, that they're a team that you judge. They're a serious team, basically.
I would be shocked if they weren't in it to win it in a prelim again this year.
Yeah.
Same position as last year.
A.
Yeah.
Gold Coast having the best season of their franchise's history. Currently sitting in 7th.
Two games in hand as well.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
One of those is, they'll play tomorrow against the Giants, and then they've got that game in hand against Essendon, which would probably say they'd win that.
They're sitting pretty. Had some good wins against Hawthorn. Who else? Their big wins come against
Adelaide.
Coast?
That
Crows.
controversial ending.
Yeah. I'd give them
That's right.
A probably. I think they're performing pretty well.
I think
Their
B+.
upside's coming through.
I think B+. I suppose.
Yeah, A- area.
I think Gold Coast are in that rare position where we really can't judge them until they actually bank that finals position. I know they probably will. But if they did have a little bit of a relapse in the middle of the season, things totally change, right?
Yeah.
True, but I think
We're not judging it on that.
we're judging up to this point. I'm going to lean towards A. I think they have not been flawless. They've had some down games, losing to Richmond at Marvel. That was a really poor performance.
Marty's missing 2 meters out.
But every team in the comp has had a poor performance, I think, this year.
Yeah.
They've established a strong identity under
Yeah.
Dimmer now. It looks like a Damien Hardwick team.
Considering the context of where Gold Coast is coming from, they didn't even really get close to finals. They were sort of outside the group, really contending last year. And I think at the moment, it would take a stuff up to not make finals from here. So on that logic, I think they've set themselves really well up, and I'll give them an A.
GWS are the next team. Man, the amount of talent that has come through this football club since their inception is ridiculous. The losses that they've had this year for me are inexcusable. Like just
Which ones are you talking?
the Bulldogs one at home, even though the Bulldogs are a good side. Like Freo at home, as much as I love Freo, like that should.
It wasn't great performance.
No. There's been a few of those.
Well, there's
this
the Richmond
year.
one where they got away with the win, but
Yeah.
I also
lose
like,
to Sydney.
What jumps off? Yeah, they did actually. That was a poor loss and like low scoring. Some of those games, like they kick 5-6 goals.
I don't know. I feel like some of the losses that they've had over the years with guys like Peatling, Cumming, Perryman,
They lost 5 last year, didn't
Big
they?
outs. Yeah.
Taranto, Hopper. Like over the years,
Bobby
like,
Hill.
Yeah, he's pretty handy. Even though they seem to replenish with, Tom Green comes in, Callahan comes in, like a Darcy Jones plays that Bobby Hill role. But yeah, they've just been a bit underwhelming this year. I'd probably give the Giants a C-.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they've ever really got going. Like as soon as they started to build at the beginning of the season, Callahan goes out and then they drop a couple. He sort of comes back in now. I feel like Hogan's missed footy this season. And Toby
Still right up there in the Coleman. Cadman's looking like he's had a better year this year.
Yeah, definitely starting to get going. I think Sam Taylor's out now.
Really?
Yeah, he's out for this week. I don't remember how long for.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just like they haven't had a lot of continuity, I feel. They did have that period as well where they were like on the road a lot, which I feel comes into the question where they were starting to drop some games. For me, I had them top 4, so it's probably a C- season, but it feels... In some level, it feels harsh because they are still competing. Like they're in the top 8, aren't they?
Yeah. Lost to Port Adelaide as well at home. That was another one.
That was a poor lot. Yeah, absolutely. But they're one of those teams that's in the 8 that's beaten top 4 sides. But they smashed Collingwood.
Geelong away. That was a good win.
Brisbane as well.
I feel like just you want more out of GWS, and for that reason, I can't give them an overall positive grade.
Fair.
And I feel like, C- for me.
I'm going to give them a flat D. To be honest, I think they'd be quite flat with where they sit in the competition right now.
And then grade them with a D.
Yeah, it is a little flat today. It must eat my vitamins. But look, I think the performances, the poor ones, have been so concerning that for me, the good performances aren't quite as sexy. I think to some extent we have trust with GWS because they generally are a successful club minus the premierships. You can sort of trust them to get back into contention. But for me, I think that at their worst, this is the least convincing I've seen the Giants. And granted they're in the 8, they haven't played the Suns yet as we record this video, but I'm going to say D. I think that'd be flat with where they're at.
You know where I talk about teams that maybe don't have the ceiling, like because of the way that their list is built, they have consistency and they can bank wins. I feel like Giants are at the opposite end of that, where the way that their list is built, they have game winners, but it's lacking the glue and the consistency of some of those.
That's probably true of Carlton.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, both of those sides are teams that have contended for prelims in the same year, actually, despite like a horribly inconsistent year leading up to about halfway through.
The only difference I would say between those two teams is they do it in completely different ways.
Yeah,
Carlton beat you up around the ball, whereas the Giants, it's more slingshot, fast footy.
Yeah, method.
As high as Zach Heaney kicks a goal for the Swans. We'll move on to Hawthorn, the Hollywood Hawks, one of the most exciting teams in the league last year. Brought in Barras Battle.
You had it right the first time.
Barras
is the correct name. Yeah.
Didn't roll off the tongue very nicely, but had a bit of a form skid in recent times. That Collingwood loss. There was another couple in there where I feel like they lost their way a little bit. Will Day goes out, that hurts their midfield, but they'll be there.
The loss to the Suns.
Yes.
Yep.
When did they lose to the Suns?
Was that in Darwin?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good game though.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
they
I think they lost 4 in a row, didn't they?
Let's get the fixtures up.
Yeah, sure.
There was definitely a form slump.
I feel like they beat the Dogs and that broke a 4-game losing streak. I could be making that up.
I can't shake this feeling with the Hawks for me that as soon as Will Day got injured, I'm like, well, you can't do anything full on this season without him. I just don't think their midfield's talented enough.
They got slapped by Port.
They did get slapped by Port.
It was Suns, Lions and Collingwood, that form slump, which are all 3 good sides, to be fair. But it wasn't about the result. It was about they sort of lost their tackling pressure and that type of thing. But earlier in the season, that win against GWS, even though they didn't show up in the first quarter, was great. I thought their win against the Dogs at Marvel was probably the best footy that they've played this year. I'm happy to give them probably a B-, I reckon.
B-.
Because I expected Hawthorn, even though they're a young side, I expected them to be right up there in the Premiership picture this year.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I think I tipped them to finish 5th. I feel like there was maybe that natural sort of slight decline off the back, but I still thought they'd be right up there and they'd be a dangerous side. I think I tipped my grand finalists to be GWS and Hawthorn. Those two sort of young, exciting sides. I don't know. Like, how do you guys see how those 2 new players have come in? Do you think that's like given them more versatility and it's made them better and it will make them better for the back half of the year too? I think that's a big part of judging Hawthorn.
They haven't found the perfect sweet spot with Barras, Battle and Sicily yet. When they do, it should be... That's a terrible kick from Joel Amadi. When they do, it should be OP. But I think it sort of has taken away from Sicily, who's had a pretty quiet year.
Yep.
No doubt they'll figure out a way to make it work. And Josh Weddle's another player that sort of played everywhere, but he could be a genuine top player in the comp.
Maybe Charles had a good year.
He's on already.
As well. But I feel like in that side, there's not too many that you would say have really, even though they're playing pretty good footy, no one's like at another level to last year. No one's really gone again.
I don't think they're as good as last year.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
We should probably move through these quicker, but I will say Hawthorn B. I think to be a general outside contender is probably about right, but they wouldn't be stoked.
I told you this would take a long time. Melbourne currently sitting 15th on the ladder. Started the season 0-5. Competed in some games, but sort of have fell away late. Their goal kicking continues to be an issue, as well as their sort of entries inside 50. Clayton Oliver, shell of the former player that he once was. Petrarca hasn't really hit the heights. Gorn and Cozzy have sort of dragged this team through to some wins, I feel. They have had a lot of improvement in their young players, particularly guys like Harvey Langford. Trent Rivers, when he's played in the midfield, has looked good. And they've got, Bowie off halfback, who's had a really good season. So they have had improvement. They've had injuries as well to guys like McV, who I think is a really good player. So I think overall it's been pretty negative, especially with the 0-5 start, but I do feel like there has been improvement in this D side. I would give them probably like a D+.
Yeah, I was thinking D personally. Yeah. Basically, I think you covered it really well. I don't think we have to go over that too much more. Yeah. They're lucky. I feel like they're lucky that they've been able to hit the draft hard in these last couple of seasons. The fact that they bottomed out so heavily in the last couple of years and underperformed, I feel like that's given them draft capital, and those players they've picked really well. Yeah. But the performance has been pretty horrendous.
Well, I feel like Melbourne have bottomed out, and they still have those star players performing pretty well. So I think they're positioned nicely.
Yeah. I think if we go back, we talk about expectation though. If we go back to pre-season, most people were talking finals.
Yeah.
And they traded their first, which implies they didn't expect to be in the bottom four at this current point of the year. So I'm going to give them an F, I think.
Wow.
They haven't come back convincingly enough for me to say that this team, which is mature, is doing well.
I'm like, what am I? I'm sort of like, I played into the Druzy D thing, and then I'm like, it's been friggin' horrendous.
No, because I think there's been improvement.
No, but there hasn't been improvement on field. Not
improvement. Their improvement has been still losing to other good teams.
Well, we gave Essendon a C, and
but the expectation. What do you think? How would you compare those two teams?
Yeah, that's fair.
And like on-field fighting between Stephen May, and Max Gawn, that kind of stuff as well. Like it's just been speculation over Jackson Pickett.
Will it really taste smart? Yeah, all right, fair. I'll lower that to a D.
Yeah, let's whip through them. We got North Melbourne next.
Dylan, what do you rate North Melbourne this year?
I feel like it's hard. It's hard to judge them because of the last few weeks that have started to. It does look like they've turned a little bit of a corner. I've talked about it a lot with the fact that statistically they're starting to actually go with teams. There's definitely been some development from some of our those midfield type players. I think Paul Curtis in the forward line has gone to another level. Was probably without that 4-week suspension was probably in line for a Coleman medal. No, All Australian. I mean, and he was actually leading the Coleman at one point, which was interesting. But yeah, I think overall, when you trade away your future first pick, you would have expected more wins. They still have an opportunity to do that. I would say a C off the top of my head feels about right.
I wrote down my notes for this in preparation before they beat Carlton today, and I do think that just changed it a little bit for me. So I said their expectations would be to try and avoid the bottom four. I wasn't one of those people that thought North were going to bounce up. I think they're still too young. But I think that their ability to beat Carlton notch up they've got 4.5 wins now last year. So that's already exceeded last year in terms of premiership points. I'd say that's probably trending towards C+, albeit they haven't played captivating footy much this year, but it has happened very recently.
I think it's one of those ones, though, where I don't think you can give them a C+. I think that's being too generous for what they've done up until this point.
Yeah.
But it sort of looks... I feel a bit more confident going into the back half of the year now. So I think you can't... But you couldn't actually give them the points for that yet, if that makes any sense.
I disagree. I think if they've improved on last year with 7 or 8, 9 rounds to go, I think that for me is enough.
Do you feel like the trading of the first pick, though, shows that the expectation was higher?
It shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I think the expectations were
I get what you're saying, though, if we're trying to project what the club was expecting.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it would have been very naive.
I know North fans coming into the season were talked about at least 7 wins.
Yeah.
That was the expectation amongst fans.
I wouldn't have said if they get 7.5, 7 wins, that's a C though. I would have said that's an A.
Okay. I would have probably been more like B for that, but yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I thought we should have been going for more.
Yeah, right.
I think C is fair. Like, you're just content with sort of what you've seen. Too much inconsistency earlier in the year. That Carlton game at Marvel... They beat them at the G today, but that game at Marvel felt like, you had to arrive at that, and it was just a really disappointing display. But the last 3 weeks, particularly, seen a lot of growth through those young guys, particularly Colby McKercher and Finn O'Sullivan. That you're seeing pieces form that are going to be at North Melbourne for a long time, that have come through the draft, or they've unearthed guys like Combin. I just feel like North for the early parts of the year, bit underwhelming, but some good performances in there. So I think C is fair.
Port.
So they sit currently 11th on the ladder, as we are obviously filming this in the middle of a game, and that could influence where they finish. But let's just say, well, they're currently 4 goals down against the Swans, and I would argue that if they lose this, it's just about season over. I would have thought their expectations this year probably would have been to compete for the top 4, considering they're coming off a prelim.
Really?
Yeah, they've just played in a prelim last year.
No,
Dan Houston leaves, and they took their draft pick in Joe Berry. Sorry, that gets me every time. And then traded in mature talent like, was it Atkins?
Lost one of
Joe
their best
Richards.
players.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think personally that Port Adelaide would have thought, shit, okay, we're probably not going to play finals this year. I think they would have said, let's load up for a top 4 finish, and have fallen massively short so far.
I feel quite the opposite. I thought there was a really obvious slide coming with Port Adelaide, and I feel like there's been an attempt to, with the Houston outgoing, there's been like a rebuild on the run type thing, which has gone into the whole Ken Hinckley situation as well with the coaching handover. Because I don't think you do that if you think you're going to finish in the top part of the ladder. And I feel like that was always on their mind, the Hinckley to Carr thing. And and I think their midfield, their nucleus of their midfield is still young enough where you can sort of rebuild on the run and then kind of make another launch in like 2 to 3 years. That's sort of what I felt they were going for.
I respectfully disagree. I think Houston leaving was certainly not part of a plan. I'm not saying you said that, but I'm saying that was the last thing they wanted. They didn't want him to go. And to trade in 3 established players, albeit probably all younger than Houston, I don't think there's enough of a push towards refreshing the list there through at least youth to suggest to me that they weren't trying to contend this year, personally.
What do you think, Drews?
D-.
I had D- based on the same logic.
Interesting. So I'm probably more in the C category. It's been worse than they would have, definitely underperforming, but I could push to a D+.
Coming off a prelim though.
Yeah, they played a prelim last year. I feel like
top 2.
They were never in that final series. They didn't have a foot in that final series.
Yeah, which is weird because they finished second.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that, but fair enough. Let us know in the comments who you agree with, because we got some polar opposite views there.
Yeah. But like C for me is there's been as many positives as there's been negatives, so it's just like
right.
And then you bring expectation into it as well.
Yeah.
Going off last year and where they're at now, out of finals contention at this point, they're probably going to lose to Sydney here. Maybe they get up, but yeah, far from D-.
It's been pretty abysmal.
They've had some injuries. I'll throw that out there. Probably not enough to excuse.
Yeah, every club has injuries though.
But one of them is one of the best players in the comp. There's that. But either way, it doesn't excuse it entirely.
Richmond are an interesting one. Finished where did they finish? Last year, Wooden Spooners.
Wooden Spoon.
Currently climbed 1 spot to 17th. I've loved the way Richmond have played this year under Uze. Had no one gave them any chance at winning that game. Round 1 against Carlton, they win that. They beat Gold Coast, who have been a really good side this year. Just the way that they've showed up, they've got a bit of an identity. Lots of young players, obviously, but I feel like their senior players, guys like Vlosten, Broad, McIntosh has had a decent year. Not anything crazy or remarkable, but I think they've found some good young players in Joe Fonte. Seth Campbell's been a good player. I'd probably give the Tigers, even though they sit pretty low on the ladder, I'll probably give them a B because
Joe Fonte.
Jonty Fall, sorry.
Yeah.
Jonty, I was going to say, I'm like, GWS guy.
Sorry,
yeah.
Jonty. Jonty mix up. I've liked what direction Richmond has taken this year, and I know Richmond fans have as well. They leave games. Even that North Melbourne game, that was a close game at the G. There was a lot to like about it. So I'd give the Tigers a
Couldn't
B.
agree more. I think as far as they've probably only had 1 to 2 games where the fans have been actually disappointed in the performance, and I think that was expected from a young team. Awesome draft, and the back line's held up, as you said, really well. So for me, it's sort of like B plus A areas on expectation.
I wouldn't give them an A. I feel like they've lost too many games to have an A.
And if I suppose like if you wanted to really exceed the expectation and win like 5-6 games, that would be an A, right? Yeah.
I'm going to go harsher than you boys slightly. I went C+. It's hard to forecast like exactly what the expectations were. I think all of us collectively underrated Richmond when they had their players back. There was some naivety in myself included. I have no idea what internally Adam Uze and the playing group and the club thought was going to happen after an injury-decimated season, but I think that to sit 17th, they're clearly better than West Coast, or at least West Coast isn't too far off, but they've played competitive. I don't disagree with any of the positives that you mentioned there, but nonetheless, still sit 17th. I think they're probably going better than expected, so that's why I'm erring on C+. There hasn't been too many performances of really uncompetitiveness. I think it's going well. However, they've got a lot more senior players contributing to that and then, say, a North Melbourne or a West Coast. And that, for me, just takes the gloss off it a little bit in terms of a rebuilding year. I'm going to say C+. I'll give them credit. They're in a good spot, but for me, it's not a B.
You feel like most of the upside has been the senior players pulling them up?
Maybe that's probably a stretch. I mean, Lawler's had a fantastic season. I think a lot of their first-round draft picks at the moment aren't really contributing massively to... I think the senior players that they have in their team are still pretty damn good. You look at the back six, for instance, Taranto's having a great season, Hopper's having a great season by their own standards.
You know where I'd slightly disagree? That the players that have pulled them up more are not the ones that came out of the draft, but they're like Seth Campbell and Sam Banks.
True.
And these guys that you didn't really know which way they were going to go.
Steely Green. That's true.
And they've sort of lifted them up, which probably for me feels a bit more positive than say if it was just those Taranto Hopper types.
I agree. Let me clarify my point. I suppose I think the spread of the age and the contributors there, it makes more sense to me why Richmond are playing well. We do not have that at our clubs.
I think as well, like one of the things with their senior players, a lot of them are in the back line, which massively helps. Makes them very more assured. And the forward half is where all of the young players are situated.
Yeah. And the midfielders, I mean, Taranto and Hopper, they're not all Australian calibre, in my opinion, but they are good quality big bodies that, again, those other rebuilding sides don't
give you a foothold.
Yeah.
Let's quickly get through St Kilda. Sitting 14th, they sort of expected to make finals this year. I feel like when people say pre-season that St Kilda aren't going to make finals, I think their fans are pretty quick to get butthurt about that.
That big name recruit, Jack McRae in the midfield.
Yeah, well, we had a good start to the year, but they've now lost 7 out of their last 9. They're always going to get like a plucky win here or there. Like they beat the D's, they beat Freo, so like a couple good wins here or there. But yeah, I don't know. They've had players that have had great seasons. Jack Sinclair, Nasiah Wanganeen, Miller, Cal Wilkie and Jack Higgins all in the All-Australian conversation. But I feel like they just play too many older players. I want to see them like put some new life into this team, and I know they are doing that. Playing Trevelyan, I think the Flying Viking Taru's making his debut this week. Yep. But I just want to see them... They are rebuilding. They have said that. But I feel like at times they've probably played experienced players when I would prefer them to just go, we're rebuilding, let's rebuild.
All of the players, Drewsy, that you just said have been good for them are all players that you just expect to be good. There's not really anyone. Like, I feel like the player that had to have a good year this year was Philippou.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't happened through injury. So they have a massive hole in the center of the ground. And I just think, I feel this year's been a bit of a disaster.
I wouldn't quite say disaster. I would say underwhelming given the expectations of the wider AFL community. Maybe for St Kilda fans, it's a disaster. I'm going to give them a D.
When I say disaster, I don't mean the actual position and the wins and losses. I more mean just how it's transpired. Not being able to play as many young players as they want, and the growth hasn't really been there. So they're not any closer than they were. They'll go into next season, I feel, no closer than they were a year ago, and that's the disaster.
Yeah, my thoughts are that trying to get reading between the lines a little bit with St Kilda, I believe they made a strategy and talked about it openly that they were going to attack 4 drafts really hard in a row, and they've done that, and I've liked who they've picked up. I think I said in a video like last couple of years, like St Kilda need to decide whether it's about the group that's in their prime now or the next group. And that's including like Philippou, Machito, Owens, Trevelyan, Darcy Wilson, sorry, not Darcy Tucker, etc. Philippou. now that I think that they've aligned themselves with, no, this is the group that's going to take us forward, I think you then skew your expectations into the future. Therefore, I'm going to go a little bit easier on them than, say, some of these more mature types. However, they have lost 7 of their last 9, and I agree. I don't know if they're not closer to getting there. I think experience in any shape or form kind of is something, but they certainly haven't improved. I think it's more of the same. There's been some bad losses. I'm going to give them a D. I think they're capable of more, to be honest. But long term, I like their talent.
Move on to Sydney as we come into the final 3 teams of this video. Grand final last year, I think most people would have expected Sydney to play finals again, but they've been super underwhelming, ravaged by injuries. Dean Cox, I'm not sold on. And yeah, their depth has been exposed a little bit. I would give the Swans, close to it. Probably D. Yeah, F.
It's FD for me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot out of their control. I totally agree. But at the same time, we're judging them on the season, aren't we?
Yeah.
Which couldn't have gone much worse.
Yeah, no, it's been a disaster.
To each your own. Oh my God, they're 5 goals, 16. Sorry, we've been looking at this. To each their own about how you want to grade them. I saved them from an F because of their injuries, to be honest. I think the players they've lost are too important and they've been out for too long that I can't possibly give them an F. But they can't be happy with where they're at the moment, to be honest. I don't think they're a finals contender at this point in the season.
13th on the ladder after a grand final. I think that's got to be an F. Even though the injury, I don't even take, Goulden's been out, Papley's missed footy, etc. But
who's the, I guess in a year like this, you'd want to see some growth in who's got better?
Riley Bice. I mean, he's a recruit, but we've seen some exposure in guys like Caden Cleary, Corey Warner. I don't know.
Wicks has been all right.
Yeah. I don't know how long-term some of these, players will be, but there's probably some silver linings. And when they get their players back, good preseason. Yeah. I don't think Sydney are ruined by any stretch.
Yeah, I'd probably give them an F. F+.
I'll go with D. You've talked me around, Jesse. Yeah. What about the West Coast Eagles?
I think everything's going to plan.
I'll let you take this one, Jesse. How do you think their season up until this point has been?
My personal expectations, which probably aligned with the club if I had to guess, was that this was going to be another tough year for us. I predicted us to finish higher than Richmond, albeit, but I also underrated Richmond there, and lower than North Melbourne, and that's exactly where we sit. We have seen a brand evolve. We have seen us be more competitive, albeit the outcomes haven't been much better. I think we've still improved from some of our worst footy of previous years. Even against Carlton, there was a horrific quarter and a half, and then it got better. So there is some growth, but at the same time, we do sit 1 win from 14 games and on track to be, as bad as any team that's come before us, really. I don't really think that's fair to say. I don't think this current evolution of West Coast, given how overexposed it is, top 5 players are missing, that's on us because we don't have the list, admittedly. But I think there has been enough growth and improvement there for me to save them from an F. I think it's too harsh, but at the same time, 1 win gets you a D.
I think you're 100%. You're spot on. I think if anything, I'd be going slightly higher, and that's nothing to do with wins and losses.
Yeah,
it again comes back to that. I guess the Essendon conversation we had earlier in the new coach, so exposure for him, and some sort of a learning there. You've gone. Elijah Hewitt is starting to look like an A-grade midfielder, albeit it's not there completely.
Sure.
Harley Reid, a little bit of regression, but then you've been able to blood some of this youth. Beau Allen's probably had a couple of games now. Tom Gross has looked good when he's come in. The mid-season draftee and Tom McCarthy was awesome on debut as well. So
Dewar got the rising star this week.
Yes, Dewar actually. He's been a shining light as well. So you've had that, and then you go into a draft with the potential of taking probably 3 top 10 picks if you can get your hands on one of those academy teams like the Gold Coast or Sydney's pick as well. So you could have a massive off season as well. So I feel like it's been, as far as wins and losses and on some level performance has been pretty terrible. You've made something out of the season.
Yeah.
In totality.
I would agree with that. What are your thoughts, Truce?
I think there has been improvement. It's hard to grade West Coast given where they were coming into the year. But yeah, I've really liked watching Elijah Hewitt, Brady Hoff, probably those two particularly developed this year. I feel like Harley's stagnated a little bit. Again, one of those sort of mid-forward players that'll take time to develop. But I feel like you have competed well throughout games and then just fallen away. Like the Brisbane loss, the Geelong loss were like you saw signs there, but to only have one win at this point of the year, I think is pretty disappointing. I'd probably give him a D, to flat D.
I don't want this to derail, but just on Harley, I don't think his body's right, but I think he's actually dealing with a lot more responsibility than people realise. Like, there's no Yo, and Kelly's fallen off a cliff. No midfielder has spent more time at the centre bounce than Harley Reid this year, and I think he's doing the tough stuff to a solid level. Wouldn't say he has improved, but there's a different element to his game that is getting missed a little bit.
I wouldn't say he's regressed. I would say,
plateaued.
Yeah, let's go with plateaued. I would agree with that.
We'll finish off with the Western Bulldogs, who at times have played the sexiest football in the competition, but just sort of sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Am I reading this right as a C- on this page here?
I wrote it
as a rough one.
Have
I feel like that's
really,
really rough on the Dogs.
Is that a pun? Because that's hilarious.
Rough like the family dog. Family Bulldog.
Didn't even think about that. So going into the season, I tipped them as a possible smoky as a top 4, and I got laughed at.
Yeah, I laughed you out of town.
I was abused on the internet after that. So I feel like it's tough when they're sitting in 9th. Pretty much, even with those, on par with those teams like Hawthorn that we talked about. I feel like a C- feels tough here. I was thinking more like B plus A for the Dogs.
Well, they sit outside of the top 8. So
isn't that a contradiction? Because you thought that would be better than
it
they
is
are?
a contradiction, and I knew you might say that.
I was just confused, to be honest.
But I feel like a lot of that was on the fact of thinking these players would improve a lot. And I feel like they all have improved. Like, Darcy has been a nightmare for defenders.
Yeah.
Ed Richards has been the best midfielder in the competition. Joel Frazier's gone to another level.
Sam Davidson's
come in and played this wing role, and they've even got a little bit of exposure to like Josh Dolan and Cooper Hines, who they drafted in 2024 as well. O'Donnell in the back line looks like a serious player. Rory Lobb's playing career best form. I do agree with you. The wins and loss column could look a little bit better, but
their best has looked as good as anyone's.
Yeah. They've had some pretty unlucky losses. I feel like B here is the lowest it could possibly be.
Yeah,
I'm going into bat for the Dogs here.
No, I like the Dogs, and I am they're kind of like my second team this year. Given we are not going to mix things up, I like them and I rate them, and I don't disagree with anything you said. However, I haven't claimed enough of a scalp yet. I feel like they failed some tests against Hawthorn. They got close against Geelong. Did they get out to a big lead against Brisbane and lose it?
Yeah, they were like over 5 goals up in that game.
So for me, they just remain a team that is so good on their day, but they're just beating the teams that they're probably expected to beat. And until they claim that scalp, I don't think internally the Bulldogs, who often have been competitive without making the top 4, I think they're aiming for the top 4. I think it won't faze them if they're 6th. They'll just worry about how they play in finals. But I would love to have seen them beat a genuine contender. To this point, they haven't done it, and they're not in the 8 as it currently stands.
Where do you have them, Drews?
I would probably say B is fair for the Bulldogs, just given that they've shown the football that they can play will stack up in finals when they make it. They've never really been a great home and away team for, from March to August or whatever. So I would say there's been a lot of positives in this Dogs side. Don't really know where it goes wrong for them when they lose.
I know.
It's weird. I expect them to win every week with the way that they play.
I do think that's a bit of an historical thing with the Dogs in that, like under Bevo, like they've always struggled with momentum.
Yeah.
And it's like they have periods of games where you think they're in complete control, like the Lions game, where any team should have really been able to. I know Brisbane are kind of psycho at times when they're chasing a lead, but like you should be able to kind of sniff that out if you're a really good team. So
if you're a really good Bulldog.
I do agree with that. We are back though, aren't we, here for the last quarter, and we've kind of got a game on. Do we have a game on here?
Let's just say before we get back into the game, get in the comments, let us know where you would rank each team, and we'll wrap up that video there. Back to the football. I told you that would take ages, Jesse.
We were going so well. We were keeping it tight, 1 minute per team. And then about halfway through, you guys started exchanging monologues that went for like 5 minutes and became a podcast.
I just knew that would happen.
I'm so sorry.
I reckon you could split that into 2 videos. But anyway, we're back. We do have a game on, Dylan. I feel like Port had a bit of momentum late there.
Yeah.
I think part 2 will be like 35 minutes and the first one will be like 12.
What do you mean? Yeah, true.
I feel like we flattened it out.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do like an A to D teams alphabetically or something, and then
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's way too hard.
Yeah, that's not a good idea. Yeah. You go Port. Oh, Blake,
I have a life, Dylan. Jeez,
sorry,
I really don't.
Oh dear.
I think maybe we push the best recruits one more week away, to be honest.
Are the Bulldogs flat track bullies? Question in the comments.
Yeah, that kind of ties into my point. Look, generally, no, I don't think they are. I think this group over a number of years has proven to be like they can win the big games, obviously, except for grand finals. In 2021, no, they did win in 16, obviously. This current year in isolation, they have beat up on some crap teams and they have failed to claim a scalp of a real quality contender. I probably wouldn't use the term flat track bully, but it technically applies here.
I just want to address my contradiction with the Dogs of saying that I rated them, but in fairness, that was a smoky pick.
Yeah,
sure.
For the top 4. It was like a bolter. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of the football public this year on the Dogs had them as this team that could have completely combusted. Like they could have had this Luke Beveridge losing his mind, getting sacked. And in a way, I don't know, something just sort of says to me that everything's kind of gone right for them. They just haven't been able to get those big scalps, and it could come in the back half. Not judging it on that, obviously. So
I agree. So my rating, which was harsh, the C- was mine. That's because I rate the Dogs. You know what I mean? So in a sense, that's me projecting my own expectations a little bit, and I think it would be their.
Do you think a little bit has come into that though? Like as they've shown you at the early parts of the season, you almost bought into the fact that because you see that development from players like Ed Richards, and it might not have been the exact same view that you had. I don't know where you had them in the where did you rank them in the preseason?
I think I had them in finals, but certainly not top 4
Right,
is my guess. Yeah.
I had them finishing 3rd last.
Really?
Did you?
Yeah, I thought it was
not
going
this
to
group.
combust at the Dogs.
They're too good for that.
I couldn't put a Marcus Bontempelli team that low.
Nah, even if they did have their injuries. At least they missed Bont for a while. I thought they coped with that well. Maybe C- is harsh, but the Bulldogs they want to play finals and be a serious team this year. If they sit outside the 8 at this point, I don't think you can give them too positive a grade.
We've got a comment here. Where does Matt Taberner fit into all of this?
What does that even mean?
That's just my brother being
It is
goofy.
Sean, yeah.
Oh, Heaney bent it like Beckham there.
Heeny, meeny, money, mo.
Bit
How
of
many
like Beckham
games
in a
does
gay bar.
Heaney win for the Swans? He
Those
wins
are rumours.
so many games.
Yeah.
Puts the cape on.
Yeah.
Heaney is back to his best.
Put on your
says
Superman
Barnesy. That's
capes.
a bar.
It's Wharfy time.
Barnesy back to his best. I've told you I've been rapping recently, Jesse. Might add that one to the repertoire.
Yeah. It's his brother's birthday. He's been wrapping gifts. I'm going to go pee.
I was at work the other day, speaking of Jesse's bladder. I didn't pee all day for like 9 hours. And I was like, I've got the bladder of a champion.
Yeah. It's probably dehydration. You do a physical job.
Thanks.
Did you drink much
Stay locked
water?
to True Footy.
Probably not.
Okay, not enough.
Figuring this out.
When it came out, it was orange. No. All right, here we go, deal. 17 minutes left. 22-point margin.
I really wanted Port to kick that first goal just to make it.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. Heaney wins the clearance. Hard ball. McInerney. Who's 21? That must be Bias coming
No,
off.
that's Goulden.
Oh, what the? God. He's been out that long and he's got a haircut.
Yeah, I know.
He doesn't have the mop anymore.
He's gone the real shaved sides. I preferred him with the sort of like longer hair.
Yeah, shaggy.
Yeah, exactly. Manny Liddy.
That leg sleeve, I'm not really a fan of.
Not digging it.
No. Nice little kick from Burn Jones there.
He's obviously come in the mid-season draft. Like, he still looks a bit like a local footballer.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Burn Jones is a funny one. All-Australian player, half-back.
Looks like he's playing for Vermont in the Eastern Footy League sort of thing.
What, Darcy Burn Jones?
Yeah.
What
Is
do
that
you
what
mean?
you meant? Is that what I thought you
No,
were
I'm talking like just generally, like, he could be more of a weapon.
Just where you rate him.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
he was an All-Australian player, showed that ability, and then, I don't know, just, I was speaking about small forwards earlier. He's one.
He is. I feel, I definitely think his best position is behind the ball.
Yeah, I agree.
He just, like, there's those, it seems to happen a lot, doesn't it? Like, Bevo did it with Johannisen at the Dogs, where seemingly an elite halfback flanker gets pushed into the forward half of the ground, whether there was something in their game that they thought wasn't good enough to play halfback, or they thought that they could help the team better in the forward half of the ground. But they just, some players just go to that position and just get starved. I feel like they're kind of similar in that sense. Like, I don't think Burn Jones has done anything since he's been a forward.
Yeah. Yeah, Bevo has always been like shuffling the magnets around, like played Bont in the ruck at one stage.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Bont's always been someone that he's moved forward, which can be frustrating. Like, I reckon
I don't mind that.
No, 100%. I think for the team, it's actually at times has been better. Again, it comes back to that thing of you have too many midfielders.
Yeah.
And then Bont is more versatile.
So who have they got running through there? Richards, Fraser.
Well, this year, I think Bont's been pretty much all mid when he's
Yeah.
played. But I think in different years where I'm trying to think of the guys that they've had. Like obviously Libba, Treloar. Yeah, I might go another one.
Don't get them mixed up, buddy.
Obviously McRae.
Yeah.
So McRae is someone that you can't play anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel like they've got a lot of versatility in there. Like Richards could sort of play anywhere.
Yeah, Fraser the same.
Yep.
Bont the same.
Cheers, mate.
I see Hayden Young in that same mould as the Bont, like left footer, inside mid. But when he comes back, because he's underdone, we've seen glimpses of him at full forward, and I wouldn't mind seeing Hayden Young. Yeah, just like midfield a bit, but then just like rest him forward.
I feel like an even better comparison is Ed Richards. I feel like that they've done the same apprenticeship. They both started at halfback.
Was Richards like a good intercepting halfback, like tough halfback? Because I feel like he's a bit more slick.
Yeah, a little bit more of a
bit more run and carry, whereas I feel like Young is
Hayden
more
Young
of
is
more of an interceptor.
but he can run and carry as well.
yeah. He's not as electric, I feel like, as Richards.
Doesn't have as much acceleration,
but
but
he need the better kick.
Yeah. He's better overhead, Hayden Young, for sure. And he's more like solidly built.
Yeah.
Whereas Richards is a little bit slicker, but yeah. But what I meant by that though was just like kind of the same apprenticeship.
That's a high tackle.
Because I don't think Bont ever really played halfback at AFL level, did he? He was drafted as a halfback sort of outside player.
That's a good question.
But he was always... I feel like he was most of the time either in the forward half of the ground or in the midfield.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he won a BNF in his second season, which was or third season maybe, as a Premiership player. I presume he was a midfielder that year.
Yeah, he was.
I don't really remember his first few games.
Yeah, and they might have started him there. Western Bulldogs fans, let us know.
Yeah.
What do you think of Errol Goulden's haircut, Jesse?
I haven't had a good look at it. Let's have a look.
He's gone the short back and Clive.
Yeah, right.
Someone said in the comments they want the Dogs to do well because it makes Kane angry.
Why does it make Kane angry? Is it because he's like always said they've got the best list in the comp?
Yeah. He's just smashed them.
I think I made a video about this last year about how the expectations on the Bulldogs were a little bit early. Like the way they've refreshed their list, a lot of their talent was still like 22 or 23 at the time that someone like a Kane Corns and the broader media were saying, oh, this team should be winning a flag. Okay, they've obviously got Bontempelli, but Richards was another one that was still kind of pre-prime at 23. Yes. I think you wait till these guys are 26, 27, and then that expectation goes up.
You're spot on. And one of the things that the media kept doing with that Bulldogs expectation, they kept referring to all Australians, and they were talking about players like Caleb Daniel and Jack McRae, who have been all Australians. So they were saying that they were like amongst the best players in the competition, but when they in reality hadn't been that for several years.
Yeah, those are players from their previous premiership, albeit quite young that year. Caleb Daniel was sensational in the years of the Bulldogs, 16, and I think Daniel stayed good for a couple of years after that, maybe more than that actually. But
the game's changed a lot. I feel since then for that type of player. But
but he was unreal. He was such a playmaker for them in his first few years.
Yeah, they were talking about that midfield of like McRae, Treloar, Libba at the time where Bont was playing a lot forward. And like that midfield isn't really, in a modern context, isn't really that exciting.
True. A lot of hype on like Jamara and Norton as well. Both players that were quite young, regardless of what you think of them. Key forwards don't hit their prime until, I'd say like 25, 26. That's when you start turning up the expectation.
I don't agree with that notion after I've seen Tracy just like bust out at 22.
But I mean, he's not going to be an All-Australian. He will be. I actually think Tracy is probably Fremantle's scariest player. Yeah, but sure, like there's outliers. I mean, Norton was probably a better player in previous years than he is now too. There's outliers.
There's definitely a relationship between key position players developing later.
I suppose there is outliers.
But I mean, look at Jeremy Cameron, Jesse Hogan. These guys are what people think is the twilight of their career, and that's... I mean, Josh Kennedy's prime went real deep. It just happens a little bit later for these bigger guys.
It's a bit the same in soccer with centre backs.
Right.
The same thing happens there. Like the peak comes in like the middle 20s.
Yeah.
And then they have a period. They can go a little bit longer usually at the back end of their career as well.
Tracy will be a lot better in 5 years than he is now, is my prediction.
That's crazy. Can't wait to see.
I think Tracy is the player that Fremantle have that scares me the most.
Yeah.
Where do you put Tracy in the like current key position forwards, number one forwards for their team? Where does he sit? You'd like I'd have like a Sam Darcy really at that top end.
Well, that's another outlier, I will say. He is so good for his age.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, Sam Darcy will be the face of the league. Like, he's that good.
Yes, I agree with that.
So, yeah, I'd probably take Darcy, I think, just on resume and overall ability.
Hogan?
Jeremy Cameron. I wouldn't take Hogan, weirdly.
Really?
I think it's just because I've had him at Freo.
Yeah, okay. Fair.
And, I don't know.
It's hard to argue with statistics though. Like he's outside of Darcy, he's the next best like contested marker.
Yeah.
In the comp.
I don't know. He was never a player that I could like really get around. Even now at GWS, like I just can't. I don't know if it's just because he came through and was shit, but I just can't get around him. I just don't like watching him play.
It'd be hard to argue that he's not one of the best forwards in the comp though.
Yeah, for sure. But I would take Tracy over Hogan.
Okay, fair. Kerno?
No. I think Tracy does everything Kerno does, to be honest.
It's a tough one. We're comparing like multiple Colemans in some cases.
Kerno's much older.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not really a great comparison because Kerno is much better performing.
I mean,
not like
who's
going to be.
Saying who's better. Where is he right now as far as output? I still think he's in the top end.
Yeah,
I wouldn't put him.
Would you take Kerno above Tracy?
Right now, I would.
Right now. But I think Tracy is going to be sensational.
Yeah.
So is Kerno though. His career is pretty sensational.
Thilthorpe?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd take Thilthorpe too.
Yeah, true.
See, those are fair. I wouldn't take Hogan or Kerno.
I think at being a key forward, Thilthorpe and is it Tilthorpe or Thilthorpe?
It's Thilthorpe. I think there was a fake news thing that people started calling him Tilthorpe and then it was quashed.
Right.
A little bit like Shea Bolton was Shy Bolton for a few years and then but a lot of people call him, even some commentators still slip up and call him Shy.
What I was going to say is on the contested marking side of the game, I think that's a pretty even one, but Thilthorpe's kicking is on another level.
Yeah. Other key forwards, you take... Oh, so it's hard when you go the other way. You compare Tracy to Kerno when you go like Tracy to Caddy or Tracy to Morris. I suppose they're different types.
They're different types a bit, aren't they?
But maybe that's just what modern key forwards are. Maybe
I feel like the game's going towards you have a Tracy and then you have a Caddy, and that's like your two. So you have this sort of undersized, really athletic forward.
Yeah. That
can pretty much run all day and kick the footy. Yeah, and sometimes like they're slightly different on that. Like I feel certain like Kerno's he's that more caddy type in a way, as well as being a bit of a gorilla. I feel.
No, I feel like he's a big bustling powerhouse.
But he's a runner.
Kerno.
He's a runner.
Yeah, he can do it all.
And like Jeremy Cameron is sort of like for me in that more like caddy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Caddy type player.
Yeah.
And then you have a kind of more of a bear in the square, which I'd say is Tracy.
Ben King or Tracy?
I don't rate Ben King that highly.
Yeah. See, that's how I feel like about Hogan. Like I have Ben King in that same pile.
Really?
I have Ben King in that pile with you.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I just don't love watching them play. And like, yes, they're effective.
Like Hogan's more of a beast than Ben King. I feel like Ben King's more that like aerial tall where they're just like,
run and jump.
It's reach. Yeah. It's a bit more boring. Whereas Hogan will like bash someone up. It's a bit more fun, I feel.
It's tough to say like you don't rate a potentially dual. Is he 1, 2 or just one Hogan? Coleman's.
He's at least one.
At least one, yeah.
I think it's one.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit stiff to say you don't rate them, but I think with Hogan, he had such a disjointed career. Like, great at Melbourne in his second season, kicked 40-odd goals.
It was rising star as well.
Yeah, then there was the Fremantle era. And I feel like he fell off at Melbourne before that. Went to Fremantle. Well, I think he kicked like less than a goal a game in his time.
He had a lot of personal
there.
issues, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I feel like even before he won the Coleman, the back end of that year, I think, he kicked 9 against Essendon? I reckon it was the last game of the year before he won the Coleman. We started to see that evolution. So it's been a short peak for Hogan, but it doesn't really look too close to slowing down. I think he turns 30 this year. Still got a few good years, I reckon.
I think this season's been really good. I think last season was incredible. Like that's pretty much the best you're going to get out of a a deep lying key forward.
Yeah.
All right, so let's rank key forwards, and we've had this chat, and it sort of stemmed from Tracy. Where does he rank? But let's go top 5 key forwards in the game right now.
Yep. Okay.
Jeremy Cameron number 1 for me.
Yeah.
Is there too much doubt about that?
I was almost gonna say Hogan.
Oh, no. Give me Jeremy Cameron every day.
No,
Yeah,
I
no,
agree.
Hogan
No,
over- Cameron over
I
Hogan.
agree. Give me Cameron, and I like the package. Do you think though that Hogan is a more rare type? Did you just look at me? I said
No,
package?
Jeremy Cameron's a more rare
No,
type.
I don't think so. What'd you say?
Did you just when I said package?
Yes. I was like, is he going to say something? All right.
No. Cameron's a more rare type. Just how many of those beast type key forwards that mark everything are there in the AFL? That's what I mean. I'm sort of like
Yeah. I guess. But I just think Cameron's like ability to just kick bags, but also push up high up the ground in the way that he does.
Yes.
Clutch player. Can't give him an inch. I feel like he is unparalleled at the moment.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think they're the two though for me. They'd be 1 and 2 for me.
Sure.
So okay, I'm gonna go Hogan 1. I'm gonna go Cameron
problem
2.
with doing this is my memory fails me. I need to be
You
organised.
forget. I know. You forget the.
I've got
I'm
my
just gonna
top
miss someone
5 here, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. It's crazy that Hogan is in this list. So much personal bias in this, but I got Jeremy Cameron, Sam Darcy, Riley Thilthorpe, Josh Tracy, and Charlie Curnow.
Okay, so
that
1
order.
Cameron,
Yeah.
2
Darcy, Sam Darcy,
Yep.
Riley Thilthorpe.
See, I
3.
forgot about Darcy, and we mentioned him 2 minutes ago. This is why I need it in front of me.
Okay, can I do it again? I'm going Darcy 1. I'm going Hogan 2, and I'm going Cameron 3. And I rate Cameron as like one of the greatest forwards of the modern era. But right now, I'm taking the skill of contested marking. I'm putting it higher.
Yeah, I must admit, I just haven't seen as much of Sam Darcy as I've seen of Jeremy Cameron. So there's some sort of unconscious bias
Right
there.
now, though.
Right? Yeah, right now. Well, I mean, I don't know. I would still probably go Jeremy, but not to discount that Sam Darcy is like unbelievable for his age. To be in this conversation is insane, to be honest.
Give us your top 5 then, Jesse.
Cameron, maybe Darcy, then Hogan. I think Curnow's got to be in here, but I mean, this isn't based necessarily on 1 year, but there's a body of work there with Curnow that is hard to ignore. So I will bias it towards those guys.
Who gets into the fifth
So
spot?
between Thilthorpe and Tracy's hard. I feel like I've seen more of Tracy. Thilthorpe's probably is having a more prolific career. I'm going to guess he's kicked more goals without actually double checking that.
Thilthorpe has kicked 28 goals. Tracy's kicked 26.
Yeah, right.
Thilthorpe, I feel like he's that same vein as Darcy, that like in 5-6 years' time, they will just be tearing up the league. So I have Thilthorpe ahead of Tracy personally.
Are they the same age?
Same income. Same starting balance.
They'd be similar, wouldn't they?
What is it? Is it the? I don't know what I'm doing.
From
That's the one.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. So
Yeah, that's probably right.
Tracy's 22. He's 2 years younger than me, which is fucking
Yeah,
crazy.
I think Thilthorpe is a year older then. I think he was 2020 draft, making him born in
22.
2002.
They're both 22. So
Okay.
Thilthorpe's actually older than Tracy, but by like a month or two.
Yeah,
So
right. Well, that counts.
I'm Darcy, Hogan, Cameron, Curnow, Thilthorpe. And then I'd be Tracy at 6.
Yeah. I got Tracy at 4.
I'm the same as you, Dylan, but I have Jeremy Cameron number 1.
Yep. And Hogan at 2.
Yeah, no, I went Darcy. Oh, you went Hogan first?
No, I went Darcy.
Oh, okay, sorry. We had
Into
the
Hogan.
same players, but I went Cameron number 1, then Darcy, then Hogan.
I've put a premium there on that player that I feel like the Darcy and Hogan package. You can I'll use that word again. Package. you can sit them in the square when the defense is really flooded and they can still take a mark.
Yeah.
They can tell there's real like bulging marks.
Yes.
Bulging.
Yeah, and the
marks.
goals are very veiny.
Yeah. Exactly.
Drill footy.
Oh dear.
This has been a fucking snooze fest of a game, by the
What a
way.
shit game.
Great stream, though. Thanks everyone
we've
that's
gotten in
joined.
like heaps of content, but I suppose that was kind of
See if you can get in the comments and just describe how shit this game has been.
And
Yeah.
also drop your top 5 key forwards in the chat.
Absolutely.
8 goals, 17. Sydney kick.
Footy Lux, I'm just reading this one. Do you guys think Dacos or Darcy will end up better? Obviously, they're different positions and they'll both be stars. But who do you think will end up the better player?
Dacos.
You're just going straight Dacos?
Yeah, I know that this argument's going to be similar vein to the Will Day, Caleb's wrong thing in terms of Darcy has more X factor and he could be an absolute alien. But if I could bet on it,
Nice. Was that an alien?
I like that.
Meet more. That's a robot. With Palpatine hands.
Oh,
Good.
it's getting out of hand.
Yeah,
No, that's
clearly.
funny.
We've got to him.
Yeah,
I don't think he would have done that 6 months
What's
ago.
happening to me?
I think bookies odds. I don't know what the outcome statistic is here, but I think you just bank Nick Dacos every day of the week. I think he's a Lionel Messi type. You know what I mean? I
The
feel
way
like,
he scans the field.
yeah.
That was what Jared Waitley. You remember that fake tweet? Somebody made a fake tweet of Jared Waitley saying Brian Myers is to football like Lionel Messi is to soccer. The way he scans the field.
The best meme of all time in AFL.
Yeah.
And Waitley, because he's not in that sort of internet age, he took like a lot of offense to it. He's like, I never said this.
Delete the tweet.
Delete the tweet, yeah, and he kind of didn't lean into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite funny. But Dacos kind of is to football.
Yeah.
What Lionel Messi is to
Yeah,
soccer.
Yeah.
no,
it
he
is,
is.
yeah.
He's the prodigy. He's the face of the AFL. And Darcy can be that. And Darcy's something that we've never seen before. Darcy, as I said, alien before. He is. He's an absolute freak. Like, you got players like Luke Jackson that, tall player that can run and get ground balls, yes. But Sam Darcy, I can't remember a player of his size with his marking ability that can kick the ball as well on both feet, across the body, field kicking, goal kicking. He's unstoppable.
You know everything you guys said about Jeremy Cameron? He's kind of that, and he's also 209.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's absurd. So that's like 8 centimeters
He's
on
a better
Jackson.
kick-
What's Jackson, like 201?
Not even.
Sure.
199.
Is he?
Yeah.
That's actually...
We're talking
That's
like
really
Jackson,
impressive.
insanely tall.
Yeah.
And pretty much he just put, like, the arms go up,
Yeah.
and you're like, no one's going to stop this.
Yeah, yeah.
Luke Jackson's 2 meters on the dot.
On the
Okay,
dot, I thought he's
yeah.
199.
Warner.
But that is actually, like, when those two go up
Campbell,
against
okay.
each other, if they're playing on each other, Darcy is considerably taller than Jackson.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
absurd.
And would
Yeah.
have a much longer reach. Sam Darcy's a better field kick than Jeremy Cameron, I think. I'd give him higher props because he can do it on both feet. Across the body. Yeah.
I think that's probably, you'd say Cameron is more, when he gets like a snap and it's like over the shoulder, he's a bit more crafty.
Better. I'd probably have Jezza as a better kick for goal, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah. More mercurial too, like for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Darcy's just going to have such ridiculous output, I feel, over his career. But we didn't answer the question, did we? You said Dacos.
Yeah.
What would you do?
I actually agreed with his reasoning. I think you just bank the Dacos because you just know what you're going to get. And there's not going to be too much variability. I mean, we are speculating about players pretty early in their career, but I just think what we know from Dacos over a prolonged or a more extended period of time than Darcy just makes me err on that side. But that is kind of just personality as well.
You're getting
My
a
personality.
guaranteed All-Australian Brownlow medal favourite
Yeah. Well,
every
I
single
think
year
this-
for the next
yeah.
15
This
years.
is the argument because I'm the opposite. I think it's Sam Darcy and it's like not even particularly close.
Yeah,
just
right.
based on the fact that you don't get that ever again. Sam Darcy.
Yeah.
There has been Nick Dacos's. He's incredible. I mean, I would say Chris Judd, Gary Ablett Jr., like that
Yeah,
type of
Gaz.
midfielder that's that good.
Maybe
they're the
Gary
best
Ablett.
players ever.
Judd was quite different, I would say.
Oh, different, yeah. I mean, like how much impact, I suppose.
Sure.
You're talking about the best players ever. And you're like, I would bank Darcy.
Yeah, yeah, we've had Judd Ablett.
But
I get
You're saying that like he's never been seen
how
before.
much better is
Sam
how
Darcy
much,
is the Cybertruck.
Okay, so how much better will Sam Darcy be than so two players similar age like Tracy versus Darcy. Darcy, I feel, is going to be that much better than Tracy compared to Dacos over.
Well, compare him to
Caleb
Jeremy
Sarong.
Cameron. How much better is Sam Darcy going to be than Jeremy Cameron?
yeah, it's a good comparison.
Well, is it a good comparison? Because it's so different.
Well, if you're going
but-
to compare Tracy, you might as well go best midfielder compared to Dacos, best forward compared to Darcy.
Yeah. This sounds like I'm having a pot at Dacos, and I'm like, I think he's the best midfielder in the comp, so I'm not. What was the question again?
Who's better, Dacos or Darcy?
Yeah.
Oh, Darcy. Yeah, 100%.
So you think there's going to be more of a gap between the peak potential of someone like Darcy and Jeremy Cameron than there is between Dacos and Gary Ablett Jr.?
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
I don't push back on that too hard. To be honest, I think it's pretty tough.
I think your answer is fair. Like it's, but yeah, I just what I would do.
There's not really much risk with Darcy. It's just unknown. And I feel like a player of his body type will end up battling injuries later in his career.
Yeah, that's actually something that came to mind. I just didn't say it. I feel like those real tall types, I don't know what the science is, but that was where my mind went.
I don't feel like that's...
Pal Pepper from 50, something for Port fans to cheer about with 2 minutes 30 left in the game.
I feel like if you took that approach, though, to every tall player, you'd just take low-class tools all the time. Why did that sound sexual? Low-class tools.
It didn't?
It didn't?
In your area?
That felt weird saying that. I was like, you guys are going to laugh at
Why
that.
did that sound sexual?
I didn't even think of it.
There was not one part of that was sexual. Who is this guy?
We have absolutely broken this man.
Oh, no. I'm second-guessing myself.
Just in the comments here, Matt says Ablett is far better than Dacos. I mean, Dacos has already won a flag.
Well, they're sort of on similar trajectories, aren't they?
Yeah, by trajectory. I think the evolved player that Gary Ablett Jr. became, I would take him over what Dacos currently is right now, to be honest.
Yeah, but when it's all said and done, I think it'll be comparable.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
I agree with
Ablett has copped some serious tags across multiple games and still dominated. That is true. Because Dacos does struggle with a tag.
The game's a bit different now, though.
He's young, though.
That era when Gary Ablett played, I know people like to reminisce about old times and nostalgia comes into this, but that was such a junk fest back in the day. And I'm not saying Gary Ablett was at all junky, but there was players used to get 30 plus disposals so easily back in the day. I feel like teams are more system orientated now.
So you're saying it's harder to get 30 plus disposals?
It's definitely harder to get 30 plus disposals.
And even though Caleb Strong does it every week, you hate on him any chance you get.
But I don't.
I'm joking. That's a joke.
The disposals don't matter. That's kind of what I'm leaning at. What I'm saying is when Dacos gets tagged now, the system kicks in, and it doesn't even require him. He might come in and have he'll have some big moments still in the games, but he doesn't need to get that much volume.
Yeah. The thing with Ablett, though, is I reckon at his best years, and including his time at Gold Coast, I think you'll find his disposal averages, which is only one thing to look at, were that much higher than everyone else. Yeah. To be honest, he was probably the first one to consistently hit 40 that I can ever recall. Yeah. So there's something in that, and then there's also the mercurialism, the goal kicking from 50, insane tricks. His strength, for a predominantly outside player, he was a gun inside mid as well.
All I'm saying is I think that both of those, what Dacos is doing now in the early part of his career is kind of on par with what Ablett was doing there. I wasn't even saying that Ablett. I was just saying there was the Ablett 40 and 2 goals thing. I feel like you're right that he was getting way more of the ball than anyone else, but it was a different era.
Yeah.
That kick from Zerk Thatcher was crazy. I was looking through some comments that we missed. Pat Kaz would take Darcy. Dacos type players are a dime a dozen. That's just wrong, but fair play. People about the key forward chat. Someone had Harry Mackay in there. There was a bit of chat about that.
No, I'd say
I was going to mention him, but not in the top 5 discussion.
Yeah, Kurno's better, I'd say.
Harry Mackay is overrated. Mackay not even in the conversation. There was some more comments.
Mackay's contested marking is a massive strength.
He's better off the ground, I feel like, Mackay.
Yeah, because as soon as he gets anywhere near goal, it's like he loses his mind.
He was a Coleman medalist. I don't understand.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Dacos will never be Ablett Jr. Ablett had insane strength and burst of speed. Dacos has the burst of speed.
Yeah.
And I don't think he lacks strength because he's a great inside player as well.
Ablett had way more of it, though.
He had those hits.
Bit stockier.
Yeah, they don't lie. I've been reliably informed. Ablett's body shape was incredible for the pace he moved at as well.
And the haircut was just unbelievable.
Yeah, more aerodynamic.
Thilthorpe better than Darcy from Trevor.
No.
And then how's this one from Trevor as well, who said Thilthorpe was better than Darcy. Rochelle would be better than Dacos if Nix gave him more time in the midfield.
Who said that?
Trevor, the same bloke that
Trevor, I love you, mate, but have a spell. Have a spell.
Oh, God.
He's a gun, though, Rochelle.
I also think
Yeah.
you overrated Darcy's field kicking versus Cameron. More the fact that
Cameron's a good kick.
he is, but Darcy can do it on both feet.
Yeah.
And kick 50 on both feet.
Yeah.
Cameron, very good field kicking. I agree. But I don't know. I think Sam Darcy's
We're talking upper echelon of players.
Yeah.
Like Sam Darcy projects as like an all-timer here.
Yes.
And that's what we're splitting hairs, aren't we?
And Jeremy Cameron has been the best key forward as the siren goes and Sydney get a 25-point win in a game that will never be remembered.
I think
That sucked.
that could have been the worst game. That, let's be honest,
We've
we were
had
barely
some
watching.
stinkers lately, though.
We were barely watching that game. That was just occurring while we did a
Yeah.
stream.
There
Yeah.
was nothing to write home about there. Happy to see Errol Goulden get through a full game,
Yeah.
but other than that,
I
that
think-
was a snooze.
I mean,
fest.
North versus West Coast was diabolical, but it was at least close.
It was
wasn't
weirdly
on.
entertaining.
Yeah,
that
this
game.
wasn't on at any point, really.
I remember actually, Druzy, in that game, you were saying this is a stinker. This is a stinker.
Yeah,
Like
no.
that wasn't anywhere near as bad as this.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because
let's-
North and West Coast are good.
We don't need to unpack this game. Is there any content we want to cover post game here?
Well, we were going to do our ladder predictions.
Oh yes.
Do you want to? Should we go through our end of season predictions? How do we see the ladder shaping up? Maybe we don't need to go through the entire ladder, but maybe if we
10?
if we can go through
Top
our top,
9?
yeah, I mean. We can call it a 10 because you can nominate who missed out. And maybe we can go through who won the spoon. But how should we kick this
Should we
off?
go top 4? Like each go through our own top 4s and then go from there?
Should we start from 5 to 8? Would that make it more exciting?
I think it would.
I don't know.
And then go up.
No, because I feel like you get the bankable ones in early.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then who makes the cut in the 8?
Yeah.
All right. I'll go first. I've got Geelong in first. I think they've got a pretty decent run home. Brisbane.
Geelong in first.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Is it? Well, okay. I think they've got a pretty easy run home. Brisbane in second, Pies in third, and the Crows in fourth.
I will give mine before passing to Dylan. I have the Brisbane Lions finishing on top with Geelong in second, Collingwood down in third, and Adelaide. Bearing in mind, I did mine through the Squiggle Ladder Predictor, so I went through the fixture and did it, and that is what it produced. Collingwood third,
so
Adelaide
The-
fourth.
The only thing I'm saying here, though, is like how many losses are you predicting Collingwood to have? Because they've played 2 games less than Brisbane and Geelong, and they're already a game clear and percentage.
I had them losing 3 more games, but I just cannot remember who they were. But I think I tipped the Brisbane Lions to beat them at the G.
Okay.
I tipped Freo to beat them at the
Oh,
G.
yeah, there you go.
For fuck's sake.
So maybe we had the same losses there.
What? Waiting for it to happen, mate. I see crazy things.
I'm just
I
looking, I'm
haven't.
going, okay, they're a full game clear of Geelong and percentage, and they've got 2 in hand. So that means Geelong and Brisbane will pretty much have to clean sweep it.
What's your top 4?
Definitely Collingwood 1. They don't leave the MCG for the rest
True.
of the season, really.
I feel like they'll just have a form slump at some, not crazy, but they will have a dip at some point.
I suppose. But
They can't carry this form all the way through.
I feel like just as easily, like the Lions, it's not as if the Lions and the Cats are playing such good home and away footy that they're just going to shit it in. I feel like Geelong going to rest players at some point if top 4's wrapped up as well.
So a couple of banana skin games for the Pies. West Coast at Marvel. No, they've got to play Gold Coast at Metricon or whatever it's called now, where historically teams don't go super well there. I'm not saying they'll
I think
lose
they lost
it.
it last year.
No, that's
No,
what I'm
they
saying.
won. They won late.
They
They
have,
did too. They did too.
they have another game against Hawthorn, who I don't think are their best selves, but historically Hawthorn, or at least in recent time, play well against them. Then there is a game at Adelaide Oval against the Crows, if I'm reading that correctly. So those are 3 nominations. They've
If you
also
don't
got.
think Freo is not a banana peel, it absolutely is.
Well, I
at
went
the
for
MCG.
the ones that are real first. And they've also got Collingwood versus Brisbane towards the end of the season.
My
I mean,
Freo
if you're going to
blood is
include
boiling.
if you include the Fremantle one, you got to include them all.
That's at the MCG.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
that
not
is
saying they
not a
can't.
banana skin
I can't.
at all.
We beat Sydney. This isn't a Freo video, but we beat Sydney
Isn't
last
it?
year, who were undefeated at the SCG. When Melbourne were like 11-0, we beat them at the MCG. Like, that's not that.
What's your form this season
but if
in
you-
Melbourne?
We were 2 goals off Collingwood 4 weeks ago.
If we include that
It's
as
not unforeseeable.
Druzy,
No, but-
they took half a side to Perth and they still beat you.
We'll see. Time will tell.
But if you're going to list the 4 games that Collingwood would lose, you don't tack on Fremantle. Because if you tack on Fremantle, then you got to tack on the other ones as well.
They may as well lose them all then.
They could win, but it's just not my prediction.
Yeah,
Okay.
whatever.
So I'm going Collingwood first.
She's not happy.
Brisbane second. Are we doing the full top 4?
Yeah, you go top 4.
Yep. Brisbane second. I'm going the Cats third. And then I am going... Oh, this is tricky. Jeez, I haven't planned well for this. I'm going to stay with Adelaide. I'm going to stay with the Crows. And I haven't looked at the run home or anything like that.
So we've all got pretty similar top 4s. Jesse and I have just swapped. Who did you have top?
I had Brisbane on top.
Yeah.
I have them beating Collingwood at the G later in the season. Obviously, such a wild prediction this far out, but I feel like what we've seen from Brisbane recently, very recently, beating the Cats in Geelong, I just feel like they're going to be this team that lifts for those big games, and I think Collingwood will be vulnerable.
So our 1 and 2 are flipped. Dylan has Collingwood finishing on top with the Cats in second, was it?
I know
Or the Lions.
The Lions,
Okay.
then the Cats, then the Crows.
But yeah,
so do we all have the same top 4?
Yeah, same-
Just different
same
order.
team.
Yeah,
different mix.
that's it. So yeah, I guess Adelaide is the only one that was probably not locked in, but you know what I mean. Like Adelaide's the one that,
We all had them 4th.
Yeah.
I suppose the home ground advantage, the fact that they recently claimed a scalp of a good team in the Brisbane Lions. Yeah, there's some level of trust developing there with Adelaide.
Yeah.
I feel.
All right, from 5 to 8, I've got the Bulldogs in 5th. Mm-hmm. Freo in 6th. Gold Coast in 7th. And the Hawks at 8.
Okay. I have gone the Bulldogs in 5th. I think there must be some relatively easy fixture here for the Bulldogs. I do rate them, but I've got them 16 and 7, which is kind of absurd. They probably won't get there. But I'll stick with it. 5th. Hawthorn in 6th with a ledger of 15 and 8. I've gone the Giants in 7th, even though I'm not really stoked with where they're at the moment on current form, save for their most recent result. And I've got Fremantle sliding in with Gold Coast missing out.
Wow. See, I feel like Gold Coast are more of a lock, not a lock, but more of a lock than the Giants based on the footy that they've played this year. But I do agree the Giants could really ramp it up in the second half of the year, but I haven't seen it enough consistently in 2025.
Tomorrow's game, we're filming this before Gold Coast and GWS play. That will be an 8-point game in that sense, and I think the Giants will win.
Very true. Over to you, Dylan.
Do we know the timeline on Will Day? That massively affects where I have Hawthorn, but basically...
I think he's going to be pre-finals, like right on the cusp.
So he won't help their ladder position, essentially. I'm going to go Gold Coast in 5. I'm going to go the Giants in 6.
In 5, wow.
Yep. I'm going to go Hawthorn in 7, the Dogs in 8.
Wow, that's quite
the
different.
Dockers in 9.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
not happy about it.
I had Fremantle making it but losing to Collingwood. You put them in 6. What a surprise. 16 and 7. Is that... How many games have they lost at the moment?
Yeah, I probably tipped them pretty biased.
Oh, no.
We're 9 and 5.
Yeah, okay, so you predict them to go... how many games are left? 2
I
losses
think I'd
from
tip
here.
us to lose against
West Coast.
No, the Lions. I might even be at Optus. I think I tipped
Yeah,
the
I think
Lions
that's
and the
Optus.
Dogs on the last.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a reasonably decent fixture, I think, for you.
So who does that...
It gets pretty tough. Like we got the
Okay.
Saints, but then we've got the Pies, Hawthorn, Dogs, Brisbane.
Oh, yeah.
We got Port away, which is always a bit of a banana peel, but Sydney did it right.
I think I've tipped Fremantle to beat Port, but lose to Hawthorn.
Okay.
Personally.
Interesting. I haven't even done that, so
Yeah,
I'm sort of
yeah.
just like throwing darts at a dartboard here. So who have we all got missing? I've got Freo missing. You've got...
I've got the Gold Coast Suns missing.
I've got GWS missing.
And then Port Adelaide in 10th. You know what? I think I did this before Carlton lost today, so they were in 11th, but that could be... I also didn't tip Sydney to beat Port Adelaide, which just happened, so maybe Sydney gets into 10th
We
or
all
11th.
tipped Port to win this.
Sydney
didn't we?
getting into 10th would be kind of rogue.
Yeah.
I would just like the point of this was top 8 and who sort of just misses.
Who's
but
going to win the spoon, though? Like, should we debate this?
I've got 9th I have GWS and then Port in 10th, D's in 11th, Saints 12th, Blues 13th, Sydney, Essendon, North, Richmond, and West Coast.
Okay, thanks, buddy. Yeah, I don't think there's too much doubt about West Coast winning the spoon. Will they win another game?
How's your... But just before you do that, what's
Yeah.
your run through after 9?
Okay, sorry. Port Adelaide in 10th, Carlton 11th, Sydney in 12th. Again, I did this before these results, so maybe mix those around. Then I have St Kilda, then Essendon, Melbourne in the bottom 4 before North, Richmond, and then West Coast.
Right. So I'm in 10th. I'm going to go Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
11th, Port Adelaide. 12th, Carlton. 13th, Melbourne. 14th, St Kilda. 15th, Essendon. Just realised I've left North out of that. I'm just going to have to drop them in here. 16th, North Melbourne.
Yeah.
17th, Richmond. 18th, West Coast.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, okay. So on the live ladder, we've only got a 2-point gap between the Demons and North, but you have the Demons shooting up to 15th or 13th in
I do.
in
I
your
have
prediction.
Essendon dropping and St Kilda dropping
Yeah.
below them.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, the actual ladder's on our screen as well. West Coast win another game. Lads, give me something. Just give it to me.
Absolutely.
We've got Richmond at Optus is probably
You'll beat them.
the only one that you'd say we're a good chance in.
I think the teams that you guys would be preying on would be Essendon, if you get them.
I don't think we do.
Saints.
Don't think we do.
Yeah, you're not too
No,
high.
that's true. We got Sydney in the final round of the season. I mean, that never goes well for us. I think we might even have 2 games. Oh, no, we have one more game against Adelaide at Optus. So we got Collingwood, we got the Bulldogs. It doesn't get much easier
The
for
problem
us.
is for a team like West Coast, when you're in that position too, the teams like Sydney and Port that haven't had much of a crack this year, they're like, we'll take you down.
Yeah.
Like we want that.
Yeah.
We're penciling that in as a win.
Yeah. And we've got Port away. I mean, that's not the craziest upset if it did happen, but you wouldn't
Freo
predict
versus
it.
Collingwood is. Give me a break.
No, I didn't say that was the craziest upset, but I'm just saying I didn't predict it. And then I also thought it was less likely than the other 4 upsets.
Did anyone have North Melbourne out of the bottom 4?
No, I just couldn't justify it based on logic.
I would say that I think that's fair. So what are we at? We're on 18 points,
Yeah.
which is still 2 games behind like an Essendon.
Yeah. But you're only 2 points behind Melbourne or St Kilda. I think North would need to start taking some more scalps. I did this before they beat Carlton today, to be fair.
You play the D's at the G at some point, don't you?
I was about to say,
Yes.
I feel relatively confident when we come up against any of Essendon, St Kilda, Melbourne, Richmond, West Coast, and then I'd throw Sydney, Port Adelaide into that sort of next group of we could get them.
I
It's
don't
less
know.
likely.
You can't get Sydney. No way.
I don't think
We can't get Sydney.
No. They pumped you at Marvel.
So did Carlton, and we just smacked them up today.
Yeah, well, you're not going
8
to go to
points.
the SCG and beat Sydney, are you?
That's true.
No, we're not.
Nah,
But,
that would be a big boil over. But you do play Melbourne. You do also play Richmond and Tassie, I
Hang
reckon.
on. We just were very close to travelling to Perth to beat you guys.
No.
We dominated elements of that game, and now you're saying that there's no way we would beat
Sydney
Sydney.
away. Yeah, I don't think you would. It's funny how we've all taken pot shots at each other's goals. We're all friends. That's funny. But yeah, get your ladder predictions in the comments. We kind of just went through it all. That's
Should we go through the awards?
mid-season ladder prediction?
I reckon we go through the awards. The Brownlow medalist,
Ooh, that's hot.
Rising Star. Shit, I
okay.
don't even know about the Rising Star, to be honest.
I feel like they're just going to give it to Levi Ashcroft.
It's probably, he's probably like the only major
For
contender.
me, I would say Ashcroft is the favourite, but I think Harvey Langford and Murphy Reid have had a bigger impact on the clubs that they're at.
I would still throw Lawler. I reckon like ultimately he's missed too many games.
Yeah.
Through injury, but I feel like when he's been in the team, he has been the best player.
I'm going to go with Murphy Reid.
That's strange.
I think
it'll be-
Levi
it'll
plays
be
a harder role than Murphy, which will count against him. Like, Levi spends more time playing a difficult role.
There was
I
stats
think
I
goes into
saw
it,
the
yeah.
other day. Just take your predictions, also I'll bring these up. Who
What
do
do
you think do?
I would for me, I would have like from games played. So I'm sort of taking out the fact that Lawler's missed football, but I think he's been the most impactful in the forward half of the ground. I think then I'd have Murphy Reid.
So here's the stats. Murphy Reid's ranks amongst first and second year players. Number one for this first and second year. Number one for scoreboard impact. Number one for score assists. Number one for goals. Number 2 for score involvements, and rated the number 3 player in first and second year players.
Is that total or is that average?
What do you mean?
Is that like are those rankings for his total numbers or his
I
average?
think total.
Yeah, okay. Because I reckon per game, Lawler would still be above.
Well, I don't know. Those stats don't lie. I don't think like Levi Ashcroft is head and shoulders above. Obviously, I'm biased as I always am. But
Yeah. I feel like Levi slotting in has been a little bit more easy for him slotting into a really good team.
yeah, and he does look like an A grader already. Levi.
He's just a good player, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think he was, again, like that draft crop last year, he's probably the most bankable. Always finds the footy so easily.
Brownlow?
Brown. So who do we go? You went Reed. You went Levi.
I went Levi.
I went Levi too.
Yeah.
As in, we're predicting.
Predicting,
right?
Levi.
Levi.
Yeah, absolutely. Brownlow.
I'd probably go Bailey Smith. Jordan Dawson would be my 2.
I like that. Dacos has got to be a chance.
Yeah.
Even regardless of what he's done to this point, like
Just vote getter.
from this point on, I'd have also bet on him being the best vote getter.
Yeah.
And he's a proven vote getter. Jordan Dawson and Bailey Smith are great shouts. I think Bailey Smith could win it. I'll say Dacos though.
Deal?
I'm going to say, I actually do think it's going to be Bailey Smith.
Yeah.
I reckon you're spot on with Dawson and
Bazza.
Smith
I like that
as the
shout.
front runners. Like I just think they've had like Bailey Smith's impact on that team too. I feel like that's going to be even more noticeable.
He's the star of that team. Like head and shoulders, as good as guys like Max Holmes are.
Yeah.
I think Bailey Smith, Walker, All Australian, and
I actually
Max
really
Holmes as
like
well.
it if he does get it as well. I feel like it'll be a bit of a move away from that really inside player.
Yeah, that first possession clearance winner. Yeah. I would agree with that.
That's probably still a test as far as like whether he will poll.
It's probably true of Dacos too.
So I feel like it's generally speaking, it's a clearance award, but it's also a big name award. So like that leans into it as well, and that'll help Bailey Smith.
Yeah.
Because he's got that star element, and I think that's what helped Dacos a lot when he was at half back too. He polled really well.
I think it's out of those two, with Dawson also polling enough votes to get close at this stage. We're probably forgetting people. Is anyone in the comments?
There'd be.
letting us know?
I reckon Brisbane fans would be shouting McCluggage.
I can't imagine McCluggage winning a Brownlow.
People are talking about Strong being up there, but I feel like there's been so many games where like Dogger's been better or Brayshaw's been better. So I don't think Sarong will win it, but he could come
He'll poll.
close.
He's the type of player that polls well.
Yeah,
he'd
exactly.
poll better than Brayshaw traditionally, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Like historically, yes, but I think Brayshaw's had a better year than Sarong.
Yeah,
this
I'd agree.
year.
Yeah.
Coleman, I'd probably bank Hogan to be honest.
Really? I'm pretty sure Cameron's 12 goals in front of the next. Yeah.
He's
Never mind.
Yeah, 10. He's 10 in front.
10.
Well, never mind.
Yeah, I don't
Jeremy
think
Cameron.
that one's the least sexy tip.
Well, he had a bit of a
Story
slow
of my love
start to the year. Jeremy Cameron. All right, and then Premier, Grand Final.
Yeah, go grand final and then winner. And Norm?
I think it's going to be... I can't really be asked with Norm because I don't know who's going to be in there, but I think it'll be a
You're also predicting that.
2023 Grand Final replay. I think it'll be Collingwood and Brisbane or Geelong.
Yeah, gotcha. I was thinking Sydney then for a second. I'm like,
You're joking.
I am Brisbane to win the flag. Against
Geelong.
Collingwood.
Brisbane against Collingwood. I will say Brisbane defeat Geelong in the grand final.
Yeah. It's those three, isn't it?
Yeah. Did Neil win the Norm Smith last year?
No, Will Ashcroft.
Will Ashcroft. Oh, that's of course he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just such a safe tip to go Lockie Neal BOG in a winning Lions performance. For me, it's not even about who's been the best team this year. I think Collingwood has been the best team this year, but I just think Brisbane will be too good in September.
Who do you think has been the best out of those three teams this year? Whose ceiling has been higher out of Brisbane, Collingwood, and the Cats?
Collingwood.
Collingwood's been the best.
Collingwood's
think so too.
clearly been the best team.
But you think Brisbane have more room to elevate and that more upside in the back half of the year?
The thing that
do think
scares me
that.
with Collingwood is they just have so many players that execute under pressure and make good decisions.
Yeah.
Like it's scary. They just don't make any mistakes across like the length of the quarter where other teams are so easy to get momentum against. And that's why Brisbane like hit these teams so heavily because they make mistakes and Collingwood just don't. It's like, Pendlebury, Sidebottom, Dacos, all of these guys, like they're just, I don't know.
All big game players.
For the record, I do probably think it's the most likely outcome that Collingwood win the premiership, but my prediction is always going to be a little bit tinged with showmanship.
Yeah.
No, I'll throw it in there, but I like Collingwood. I don't have an argument against them winning the flag. I suppose maybe almost they haven't lost enough at this point of the season. Like,
Well, that's sitting duck analogy, I suppose, is kind of there. If there was one, we all went Collingwood, Brisbane.
No, I went Geelong, Brisbane.
Oh, you went Geelong,
I
Brisbane.
went Collingwood, Brisbane.
Yeah.
Collingwood
If there was a team from that, like we all kind of, I think, see those three teams as being the front runners. If there was a team from outside that group, who do you think it would be?
the Dogs.
Dogs.
I reckon. Yeah.
I think Adelaide could work themselves into position to just about be in there on grand final day, but I don't see them winning a flag, which I realise is not that big a step, really. But well, in some ways it is. But for me, I'm actually more confident that Adelaide will qualify for the top 4 than the Bulldogs, and therefore, by default, are more likely. Which I realise if I applied that logic against the Bulldogs in the last 2 grand finals, I would have been wrong.
It's a tricky one. I don't disagree with anything you've both said there. Like, I reckon any team coming up against the Dogs in the finals would be like, shit.
Oh, yeah. But then again, the Bulldogs were also beaten last year in elimination final. But I agree, like what they're capable of, what the team we've seen them be a bunch of times is scintillating.
I suppose I'd go Adelaide there. Safe choice.
Yeah, I just think they're going to bank enough wins to be in the 4 and then maybe spring in an upset qualifying final win.
I feel like there always is a side that pushes a bit deeper. Like, I don't feel like, even though Brisbane were premiers last year, like, they had no right to win that game against GWS and they ended up getting through. And, like, even against Geelong late, they were down and they get through and then just, I didn't think that Brisbane, I thought they were better in 2023 than they were the year.
I reckon a lot of pundits throughout the season at some point would have ruled Brisbane out.
Yeah, last year.
Oh
yeah, 100%
for sure. It was the most unconventional way to win a premiership.
But there was like discussion of like disharmony in the group, the sort of Vegas trip or something like that. Sam McClure was popping off. Like it got that bad. I actually don't know if I've seen a team like rally and regroup as quickly as Brisbane did to win a flag in that season. That's actually pretty unheard of.
On grand final day too, who did you guys tip? Because I tipped Sydney.
I actually cannot remember. I think I tipped Brisbane. No, I tipped Brisbane. Yeah.
I was saying
you're like, that sounds right.
Yeah, that sounded right. No, I was confusing it. The previous year, I also tipped Brisbane to beat Collingwood. I got that wrong. I definitely tipped Brisbane to beat Sydney. I'm 80% sure.
I was saying to Jesse yesterday, we were at the grand final parade. My man Connor Rogers was doing the emceeing and we were like right at the front. So like when the cars were coming out and he was announcing the players, obviously. And I looked at Caden, I was like, Sydney are so much more stacked than Brisbane. Like the stars in this team, and obviously just didn't put it together on grand final day.
And it doesn't. That's what we were talking about. I remember at the start of the year, like it doesn't feel like it as much. They lose a Goulden's out, a Papley's out, and it's like this team doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
They got the win tonight.
I think I thought that Sydney like had the star talent, but I had just watched Geelong versus Brisbane in the prelim and I was like, that team's not losing the premiership. I'm pretty certain. Like, that'll look silly now if I was wrong and I tipped the Swans, but I'm sure I tipped Brisbane for that reason.
I think the fact that they did so well in that 2023 grand final gave them the belief.
100%. Yeah. They knew what they had to do to get the win, and Sydney haven't come close to that in a long time.
Yeah.
Got calls to stay on for another 3 hours for the St Kilda Collingwood game.
Oh, God.
Probably not.
I forgot it's Saturday. I'm used to it being
Sunday. We usually finish late. Like we actually,
a bit of a night.
It feels like a Saturday night game because we also like we make everything like we black everything out here.
Yeah,
so you kind of forget that it's
forget there's an outside world.
That's probably a good thing to go into here though. Who is going to win tonight's game? I don't know why, but I've said everything I've said about Collingwood, but I feel like this is a slight weird banana skin.
No.
So the reason that possibly that is lingering in your mind is because St Kilda beat them last year. Admittedly, the MCG. That was the one where Higgins kicked an outrageous goal on the boundary. The ball was actually over the line.
I think too, we've probably got to temper the last year's results with Collingwood because they're not the same team.
That was early in the year as well.
Absolutely.
No, I think the Saints are going to continue this form slump, and I hope they do. I'll be watching this game with a keen eye because we got the Saints next week.
Okay. Yeah. Also, I just realised I'm pretty sure I tipped Geelong and Collingwood as I do an end of season, like December ladder prediction for the next year. I think I went Geelong Collingwood. This year, I tipped Geelong to beat Brisbane in the grand final in my preseason predictions. So I think I've got all three teams right, guys. Pat? Yeah. Why should it be Adelaide versus the Hawthorn or something?
Pat there?
Yeah. Like pat on the back.
Pat the back.
Yeah.
I want to give you a high five.
The postman.
I want to give you a high five here, as you can see on the play.
We kind of overlooked. None of us thought Hawthorn would make the top four. That's probably one where we're going to get some comments.
Do you reckon?
Knowing the True Footy audience, yes.
Interesting. I sort of thought that they were destined for 5 to 8 this year.
Yeah, okay.
Off the back of not having Will Day.
Yeah. Well, look, if they can click into a gear that we saw last year, then yeah, absolutely. Like they could beat Collingwood, etc. You'd think the Hawthorn of last year beats Fremantle at Optus, which is another tough game given Fremantle's home ground advantage there. So we'll see. But I agree on what we've seen. I'm not extrapolating that into top four.
I like it. All right, boys. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
Wrap it
Yeah,
up.
wrap it up. Like,
Thanks everybody
Sunday
for
lunch,
listening
Christmas.
once again to Footy from the Flat on the True Footy YouTube channel. We will be back next week, boys. We haven't really got a game locked in yet. That'll be your last stream for a while. Jersey.
Yeah. I'm off to Europe for 6 weeks. Can't wait. It's going to be sick. Going to be carnage. Friday, Saturday is not on for me. So it might have to be the Freo Sunday night. You know?
Oh, look how that's worked out. We are
or the
Freo
Thursday
channel.
night.
Who were they playing?
St Kilda.
I'll be at work Thursday night.
We can't.
And
do-
it's also Port Adelaide Carlton.
Yeah.
Well, I can't do
that leaves Sunday night the only option because Dill's going to be at the Champs game Sunday Arvo.
Okay.
That is true.
All right. We don't have to do this right now. We will let you know.
We'll figure this out behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But thanks for watching again, and we'll see you in the next one.
Subscribe.
I need to pee out of my wiener.